19 books, 4 weeks, one story. Let the EUing begin. Hey everyone, welcome back to another EU-tastic episode of Empire Radio. I'm Jeremiah.
I'm Andrew.
I'm Drew.
And we are back with the biggest EU project Empire Radio has ever seen. And like I said, 19 books over a span of 4 weeks. And our buddy Andrew has been working his butt off for the past, 4 months?
6 months.
6 months? It's been a little longer than 6 months. Getting this done, reading all these books, probably rereading books and doing all this. No?
One read through. Didn't have time.
Oh.
Didn't have time to reread them. Thank you. Really quickly, going back, Jeremiah, everyone, I hope you enjoyed the new intro, by the way. It's been a long time coming.
We were supposed to have it for last summer for Bad Batch or something, or whatever. No, it was something
else. Bad Batch one. Yeah,
whatever it was. Yeah,
I want you to know that every time I guessed, I was on here as a guest, and I heard the Bad Batch one for stuff that wasn't Bad Batch. My heart broke a little bit. It did. It truly did. And I was like, I need to get it done. And then time keeps getting away from me, and I need to get it done. And then I was
ticks away sometimes.
Yeah. And then this weekend I was working on these episodes, and I was like, now's the time. So I just sat down. And
are you going to be able to get us an Andor one before Andor? Just kidding. JK.
No, that's why we got this. This one's the all-purpose one. But I will say, Jeremiah, I thought about you, and I didn't do this because, again, I've been really pressed for time lately. But I almost did a version that was that, but just one cowbell consistently clonking the entire time really loud, and sent that to you as a joke. Like, here's your surprise. And that was the one that I sent first.
And it was funny because you were telling me you have a surprise for me. I was like, for us or whatever. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
I didn't completely forgot about you doing it because it was like last year you were going to do it. And I was like, okay, whatever. But then on Sundays, I eat lunch and then I go to a thing. And then I come back and you already posted it. I guess you didn't want to hear the surprise.
Yeah. So, anyways, I did think about
the chat's on fire tonight.
Is Andrew getting Disney Plus for Andor? Yeah, probably.
Yep. Probably. It's only $3. You better get on it right now.
So,
with ads though.
But yeah. So.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Well, Hulu with ads. Is it Disney?
No,
too?
It's Disney.
The bundle is with ads for both.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Oh, that ruined my day.
That's why it's cheap.
Yeah. But yeah, so there's that. But yeah, we're EUing it up.
Yep. So unless there's anything else you guys need to talk about, we might as well just jump into it.
There's a lot, but
there is.
No, I'm just kidding.
Oh,
we can just talk forever.
Did I miss something? But
yeah. So this was going back. Jeremiah, when did you approach me about this? It was
literally you got them all the books in the mail, so you could check your Amazon or wherever you got it from.
Yeah.
And you posted a picture of it, and then I literally took a basketball
bracket.
No, a basketball court picture.
Yeah.
And I put EU March Madness with Andrew, and then I said 19 books, 4 weeks, one story, and I did it as a joke, and literally I think I'll actually take you up on that. Oh, cool. We got a March schedule planned out.
Yeah.
It is March 19th. And so.
But March Madness really doesn't start till this weekend.
Yeah, but now it's going to go into April. So my whole gimmick of EU March Madness is.
Well, the thumbnails are different anyways.
But, and also March Madness goes kind of that far into.
Okay. March Madness is a state of mind. True. It's a way of living.
It's all
about your
mental.
mindset.
It's all mental.
What
is March?
Yeah, sorry for not being here the first week of March, but your boy kind of last minute, more last minute than I would have liked to move to Oakland from LA. So I'm in NorCal now. It's actually really great. the nicest apartment we've ever lived in. For those of you watching the video version, I did move. My room is different. It is different. Everyone, Drew was like, "Did you even move?" I was like, "Yes, dude."
No, I saw the boxes. I knew you did, but
He sets up a fake move just so he can delay this presentation 2 weeks.
hey,
Like,
respect.
Yeah.
Respect, you know.
It's funny because like I sent one of my buddies, one of my friends that does guitar covers a picture, and he's like, "Bro, you just moved across the hall. You didn't go anywhere." I was like, "No, dude. Like I moved 6 hours north." Anyways, so it's been a while. It's been a wild ride, but yeah. So I've been reading these books for months, just months and months. And basically I didn't read anything else during that. And I finished the last book like 10 days before we moved. So like if we weren't moving, I want to let the record show I would have had enough time to be there by the first week. I did finish all the books in time. And so yeah, it took me like 6 months to read all of them, and it was thoroughly enjoyable.
Would you read them all again?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, oh yeah. I mean,
Slower pace,
not for a
obviously.
little while because it's still pretty fresh. I will say this was a really fun, really enjoyable idea. Until I started I had to put everything together, and then the enjoyment went really far down because it's basically a book report. And it reminded me a lot of college. But I'm going to go ahead and do this. Shout out
did you make
to
an exegesis paper on any of these books?
it looks like it. I want to go ahead and shout out Wikipedia and Reddit user Naga's Shadow, both of which for having really comprehensive summaries of the books. The Naga's Shadow on Instagram, or not Instagram, Reddit. There's an EU subreddit, and I found these like reviews and summaries that this person put up after they were rereading through them. And it was really helpful as I was putting stuff together. So I kind of merged that and the Wikipedia and like some of my own notes and stuff together into like a cohesive story. And so kind of jumping in here, the idea, like Jeremiah said, is to take 19 books and tell the complete story over 4 weeks. And I don't want these episodes to be like 3 and 4 hours long. The idea is to
I don't either.
the idea is to keep the each section as short as I possibly can while still telling the entire story. We're not going to be going as in depth as Death Troopers. There's no way. There's just freaking
Perfect.
There's no way.
Because that was one book and that was 4 hours.
Yeah. So I will say that I'll do this disclaimer. That is true. I'm going to do this disclaimer every week, but there are things that just couldn't be included. And I do think when you tell the story in kind of this like summary, like bulleted point style, you do lose some of the aspects that make the story as good as it is. So like, just know if you're out there reading, people talk about this series as some of the best of the EU. I will very wholeheartedly agree with that sentiment. And if the story isn't hitting, it's also probably because there's a lot of character dynamics and dialogue and stuff that like I just can't fit in. So this is going to be like a 30,000 foot view, big summary of the whole story, so you get it. But yeah, I didn't realize what I was getting myself into, and I started reading these books, and I think it's pretty confidently my favorite story, Star Wars story that I've read out of all of them so far.
Canon and EU, or just are you talking about EU?
Yeah, canon and EU. And the reason for that is because it's 19 books. Like this, nothing about this is rushed.
Right.
Nothing. And so like you really, really get time with the characters, multiple characters. Like this is a very, like as Star Wars is, this is an ensemble cast, and certain stories revolve around certain characters. Like there are some books, we'll hit one in a little bit. There's some books where a character, like a main core character, makes one appearance and then they don't show up, and they focus on other characters. And so it creates this really just incredible, cohesive, like multifaceted story from a bunch of different angles, from a bunch of different perspectives, different ages. And by the end of it, all of the characters are developed really well. Even some of the minor characters have their own kind of moments to shine. And I think it's quite the feat considering the circumstances of the writing. So anyways, but I'm basically getting into the books without getting into the books. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right.
Ooh.
You good?
Yep.
Now my view is weird and I can't see you all very well. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Okay,
You're
so
the star of the show tonight. That's all that matters.
anyways, all right. So please, you're probably gonna have questions. Just interrupt. Just ask all of the questions.
Okay.
All right. I would love to answer them. And
Are you gonna do any like background information about the series?
I am.
Okay.
Oh yeah. I
I
can't.
had some questions, but I was gonna wait to see if you were gonna answer them first.
Okay.
So
All right.
go ahead.
I really wish that I wasn't the biggest one on my screen, but that's
If
fine.
you click on it,
If you click
It'll-
on it, it will make your presentation.
Oh, there we
on
go.
Discord.
Yeah, I got you. Okay. I don't know how to use technology anymore. It's fine. All right, let's
you're getting
dive in.
old. It's all good.
Yeah, so let's talk about some general stats about the New Jedi Order. So again, 19 novels. These were published from 1993 through 2003. 12 different authors contributed to the project. That's what I meant to say. And I think that's what's amazing about this is because an author would either get one book or two books. I think there's one that got three towards the end, but I think the most incredible thing about this is that they were able to write this massive story and do it as well as they did. And I started there's actually a YouTube series that was just recently released on the creation of this series, and it's a documentary. It's like a lot of different like interviews, and like they take interviews, they take like con panels, and like it's with the authors, and it's really cool, and there's a lot of information. And I think one of the coolest things was like learning just how much the Lucasfilm Story Group and these authors cared about continuity. Like they had a centralized, what they called the Bible, that was like, at the time it was like CD-ROMs, but it was a database that they had
CD-ROMs, the good old days.
They had a
Floppy
continuity
disk.
guy full time. Like his job was full-time continuity at the time, and putting locations together and species together and weapons, and like they had this database that they pulled from. And George Lucas, I think I put this a little bit later. Yeah, I do. George Lucas wasn't really involved, but there were specific things he said. He was like, here's a small list of things you cannot do. And one of them was kill Luke Skywalker, which is an obvious one. But I will say, as a plot twist, there are authors that have gone on record saying that they wanted to. So if that's an indication of like the story. But yeah, anyways, it was just really cool because the authors they had moments together and they had moments of comparing notes, but a lot of it was picking up where the other person left off while simultaneously laying story beats for the next person that's coming. And I think the craziest thing is the way that they were able to write the characters so that they felt the same throughout 19 different books.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And not only that, but they're taking characters that were already Luke, Leia, Han, their personalities, and developing them. It's wild to me. So anyways, every single one of the books ended up on a New York Times bestseller list when they were released. Every single one. These things flew off the shelves like hotcakes. This is the first Star Wars publishing initiative of its kind from Del Rey. So Del Rey had the rights right after the original trilogy, and then Bantam Spectra got it for a while, and under Bantam was like the Thrawn trilogy, that initial like kickoff of the EU with Timothy Zahn and a few other novels, and then Del Rey ended up getting it back towards the end of the 90s, or like mid to end of the 90s, And so this was like the first thing they did. It was like this and the new the Phantom Menace novelization, I think. So anyways, it was intensely monitored by a continuity team from Lucasfilm, though George was only minimally involved. The New Jedi Order was meant to be a high stakes departure from the books and the story that preceded it. And this was very specific because multiple authors in those interviews kind of came on record and they were like, they were just invincible. Everyone was too powerful. Like there was one that was like Luke could beat anything. Like he was too powerful. The core team was too unstoppable. The galaxy, like they were winning too much. And they were like, we wanted to write something really gritty. We wanted to pull no punches. Like we wanted to really like raise the stakes in the Star Wars galaxy in a way that had never been done before. And let me tell you, it worked. This is at times a very dark Star Wars series, which is again very different because like I'm rereading the Thrawn books right now, the Thrawn trilogy. Thanks, Jeremiah, by the way. You kicked that off with the special edition.
You're welcome.
And it doesn't have the same weight. Like even as Thrawn as the villain that he is, it's still like like the losses aren't real losses compared to this. Whereas a loss in this book is like, oh, this is irreparable damage done to the continuity of Star Wars in some ways. So it hits really well. And then it's worth noting that there are 5 core books that were released as hard copies. And then there were books that were kind of viewed as not filler because they add to the story, but they don't contain as key of like story plots and stuff like that. Right. You can technically, though I would never advise this, read those 5 books and pretty much get the whole story.
Cool.
But like stuff's going to blindside you because you don't have the full context, but it's there. And so as we go throughout these episodes over the next few weeks, you'll notice that when those 5 books come up, those are going to be a little bit more in depth than the other ones. The other ones are going to feel shorter. And part of that is because not as much happens in those other books, but you'll get that. Excuse me.
Did any of the authors that wrote any books, are they like, have they written any canon books? Do you know of, or are they all like old guys that are like dead now?
No, many of them are still alive.
Wasn't I will that say, long ago, right?
93 to 2003, but like, you know, it's
so
ended over 20 years ago. So I don't know if any of these guys are still writing canon Star Wars books, or
so
you'd recognize any of the names now.
Do you recognize the name James Luceno? He's a pretty popular. So he did Tarkin,
okay,
which is canon.
Right.
He did Catalyst, the Rogue One novel.
Okay.
But he also did Plagueis. He also did Dark Lord: Rise of Darth Vader. He did Labyrinth of Evil. He's a heavy hitter in the Star Wars universe. But he did the last book. There are, I don't know. He actually did 3. 2 of the books we're doing tonight are by him too. But I don't think any of the other writers have done canon. But I do know that many of them did multiple entries of the EU. They were after this series, they kind of pulled them back in for other stuff.
Cool.
So yeah. But yeah, James Luceno, if you've read the EU, you would know that name. Like that's a pretty well recognized name. Okay, so let's set the stage. All right. This whole series is 5 years. It's going to cover 5 years of time. There are going to be time jumps in between the books, and 5 years is going to pass from start to finish. It is set 21 years post Return of the Jedi, beginning in 25 ABY. All right. So Luke is like in his early 40s.
Oh, you're doing your Star Wars math? So
I'm not doing. Yeah. Anyways, they're older. They're older, but they're not old.
Right.
Still very spry. but they're not like teenagers anymore. So here's an interesting point. 6 years prior to this series, in 1980 Y, the 21-year-long galactic civil war ends with the signing of the Pelion-Gavasram Treaty. If you remember the name Pelion, depending on how you want to pronounce it, you would remember that from both canon and Legends now.
Yep.
As Thrawn's captain. In the Thrawn trilogy, the EU one, he is also Thrawn's captain. And he does go on to become the supreme commander of the Imperial military. He kind of holds the fort down during the entire war. That whole treaty thing is actually covered in the Hand of Thrawn duology, which Timothy Zahn also wrote. And I happened to read those because like I was like, I want to read those, and then I'm just going to start going through the EU. And this was the next series. So I happened to read those first, and I'm really glad I did, because like, you don't have to have the context, but like they reference a lot of stuff, and I'm like, oh yeah, it just helped. Yeah. And I will say that there are a lot of references in these books to other books. Like, this is a very deeply embedded series in the Star Wars EU canon. And interestingly enough, there was also talks that it was going to be its own thing. They were talking about it being like, kind of like a departure from the canon and its own like new thing and kind of setting new rules. And then fans found out, and back then you would write in, and they got so many letters that they were like, oh, well, I guess we'll keep the story going. So anyways, at this time, the Imperial Remnant permanently occupies a small portion of the galaxy in like the northern region. If you think of Coruscant and the deep core as kind of like here, it's up there. They have their own boundaries, but basically they're a fraction of what they once were. But yeah, the war's over. The Bothan Borsk Thalia is the New Republic chief of state. You may remember him from the Thrawn trilogy. He was a counselor at the time, and he was like he's kind of a weasel. He's really backstabby, and like he's a good guy, but he's like really he's a butthole, and he hates Leia. Anyway, so it's a whole thing. But he's now chief of state in the New Republic. What else? Is there anything else that I can remember off the top of my head that I didn't put here? But basically, the big thing is like the Civil War is officially over. Like, the Empire and the New Republic are no longer actually fighting at this point. And it took 21 years to get to that point. Jeez. So, yeah.
Fun.
All right, so let's go ahead and dive into book number 1. Vector Prime. Now, Vector Prime is one of the core books, so this is going to be a little bit more in depth. And as you'll see in the slides, for each of these, what I'm going to do is kind of put together like a mood board. It's a terrible way of saying it, but basically, when I was reading through these books, there's so many new characters that it was very helpful for me to look up character appearances, so I would have them in mind as I'm reading, as well as certain forms of technology, certain enemy things. The Yuuzhan Vong are very new in terms of how they act, their technology and all that stuff. So I kept looking things up, and I was like, I'm just going to put together a little collage of stuff that you can just reference as I'm telling the story so that you can keep things in mind. It will also include a map. And this is an interesting thing really quickly. So at the beginning of every one of these books, there's a map of the galaxy. It's very similar to the...
that's cool.
I don't know if it's going to focus, but the later books, and you'll see this when we go through them, actually provide a map of the invasion corridor too, and show the different fronts. It's really cool. This was the first time a map of the galaxy in Star Wars, in the Star Wars zeitgeist, had ever been put together. And it was actually born of a passion project of some like one or two of the writers, and there was like a forum, and they were like dedicated to like putting everything where it needed to go. And that kind of turned into this official EU map. And this was the first time that you had really seen these planets in proximity to one another. Because up until then, it had been like, they went to Dantooine, and then they went to Naboo. And like, no one really asked
where everything was.
Yeah, like even in the Thrawn trilogy, it's like they talk about planet hopping and being in hyperspace for 48 hours and stuff like that. And you're like, oh, they're traveling a long way, but you never really know. And this was fascinating to me because it's also kind of mandatory when you talk about invasion and you talk about planets falling one by one by one. It's like, okay, well, it makes sense to know where they are. And so we're gonna have a map for each book, and I've highlighted the planets that we visit throughout the book so that you can kind of get a sense for scale. And then one of the things that I had to keep reminding myself when I was reading these books is like space is so much bigger than this map implies it is.
This is not to scale.
Yeah, this is not to scale. So, but anyways, so yeah, we do have a lot of new characters. They'll come up as they come up, but you'll recognize some returning names. Mara Jade's here. The 3 solo children are here, which we saw in the Thrawn trilogy, but also in the Jedi Academy series. They were there. And then there's Kip Duran. You remember him?
No, sorry.
Jedi Academy. Okay, it's fine.
I was just thinking my comment when you were posting the thumbs and stuff for me. My comment. The one girl looks like Rey Skywalker, dude. She looked exactly like Daisy Ridley, dude, in that picture.
It's freaking Jaina. It's Jaina Solo, and it was deeply offensive to me. Anyways,
I was like, see, they did use the EU to inspire Rey.
It's a Solo kid, okay.
But anyway, just quick, as for like the map, like I wish there was.
Tanner's here. What's up?
I wish there was a canon like galaxy map kind of. Now, the closest thing we got was I just finished playing Star Wars Outlaws, and that takes place on 4 different open world planets.
Mm-hmm.
And you can like zoom out and you can see where the 4 planets are. And that's the closest I think we got of like exact locations.
Yeah.
And it's funny because on the map, they also have the unknown regions, which is all the way to the west.
Left. Yeah.
So
yeah, we're gonna explore those later in the final few books. But I think that's the thing. That's the thing that was really special about this period of Star Wars. And it's not, to some it will be better, right? But at face value, it's just different. Because now Star Wars is owned by Disney, and by default, it's a very large entity, right? It doesn't feel within reach anymore in the same way. You're getting what Disney produces, and yeah, you're engaging with that. You're talking on forums, you're posting on Instagram, whatever. But like really, it's not like really a two-way relationship. Whereas this back then, I think one of the special things about this period of time was how deeply embedded the fan communities were. And like, you're talking about this map, and like, we don't have a canon map. And like, the reason we have this map is literally because of a fan, in part because of fan passion, like being on a forum and being like, I'm going to take my time and try to map out these like,
right,
fictional planets. And it doesn't mean it's not world changing or anything, but now like, look, we have this, and it's like, there was always a lot of dialogue between the authors and their fans via mail, and like it just felt really connected, and it can't be the same now because of the size. Like Star Wars wasn't as big of a thing then, but
yeah, it was kind of like, I guess Star Trek's not like that now, but like back then too, like that universe was so small that like fans were more able to impact certain things. And which is why like a lot of people, especially that age group, have so much issues with Disney taking over, is because they don't have that impact anymore, and it's hard to let go of something like that. So it makes sense.
I saw a clip today on YouTube of like a game show back in, it must have been like in the 80s or early 90s or something, and the question was, who was Luke Skywalker's father? The first guy that got it in said Anakin Skywalker, and the guy says,
"Oh
no.
yeah, I saw that. I saw that too."
The next contestant said Darth Vader. Correct.
I saw that too. It was like a game show, and I was like, "That's so stupid." That guy was so hyped too, and he got it right and he got it wrong.
All right, anyway.
But yeah, I will say this isn't going to be the EU's better than canon, EU soapbox time with Andrew. That's not what this is going to be. But I will say, before we really dive into the first book, that reading this series, I would be lying if I said it didn't make me mourn the lost potential. Because like every single one of these authors was a massive Star Wars fan.
Right.
And the care that they take with the characters. And I mean, like, we see this in the books we have now. But there's a disconnect in some ways between the care that's taken in the books, even the canon books, versus the movies, versus And so reading through this, I was like, man, this is top tier storytelling. This is some of the best Star Wars can be for me personally. But anyways, Vector Prime, first book in the series, Vector Prime. Y'all ready?
Real quick, Andrew, did they reprint these ones? You know how like they redid the Thrawn and stuff like that?
I don't know. I don't know if they're gonna do these. They haven't done them yet.
Okay.
But the ones that I have were mass market editions from 2015, and I literally got a full set on Amazon, brand new. They were still on the plastic.
Wow. So they're still out there. You're still going to purchase them.
And you can get them, like, I was talking with Tanner about this. We've been texting back and forth over the past few months about this stuff, and he would like find them at half price books and stuff. Like, you can find them.
Yeah, it's just like you can't get them all though.
Like you can find them. Yeah, there's still sets out there. But I mean, you're gonna pay. I mean, my set, like, I'm gonna be real with you. It was like $160 something bucks.
That's so cheap for 19 books. Like, that's cheaper than buying an individual book now.
Yeah.
So
I wonder if they have them on Kindle.
Maybe,
but maybe not.
Anyways. Vector Prime. You guys ready?
Yep.
All right. So our story begins with Leia traveling to the planet of Ramamul, which I'm now realizing
is not on.
Your boy had one job. Anyways, it's not super consequential. So we're traveling to Ramamul to speak to its de facto leader, Nam Anor. Leia is on the Jade Saber with her now sister-in-law, Mara Jade Skywalker. Yep, they're married, by the way. Her and Luke got married. They, in that Thrawn duel, I'm not going to talk about it. Spoilers. I'm not going to spoil too much. By the way, it goes without saying, but I'm going to say it here.
Just say it.
Massive spoilers for this entire series. I would very strongly recommend everyone give it a read if you can. And if you really don't want to spoil it, maybe don't listen to this right now. Come back and listen to it. But
push play now so we get the view count and like
just mute it. And just mute it. And just mute it.
And then go do some homework or something.
In the background of YouTube, just our beautiful faces.
That's yeah. So Leia's on the Jade Saber, Mara's ship, with her now sister-in-law, Mara Jade, and her daughter Jaina. The Solo twins, Jaina and Jason, are now 16. So young, on the cusp of being youngish adults. And Anakin, the younger of the three, is now 15. So they're teenagers now.
I forgot they named their kid Anakin.
Yeah, that's a thing. It's not going to come up really in these overviews, but there is a running thing with him for a few books where he's like really obsessed with not becoming his namesake.
Does anyone like make fun of him? Like, no. Hey Vader, how you doing? Blah 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 blah.
No, not in these books.
But also, can you imagine that burden? I feel like that would be.
I mean, he carries it. I mean, he's very acutely aware of it in some moments.
That's kind of cool though that they're aware of that as writers.
Mara she's extremely sick. She's extremely sick with a mysterious illness that attacks and destroys her cells on like a cellular level from the inside out. So far, no single treatment has been helpful, and every other person with the disease has died. There's a moment in one of the books where they talk about getting the best scientists, the best doctors from the entire galaxy, and no one can crack the code on this thing. And she's literally holding it at bay by strength of the Force, which really kind of is eye-opening to her level of power. In these books, you'll see this later on. She's not as powerful as Luke, but she's pretty freaking close. Like she's extremely powerful, and she's been trained very well. But yeah, so she's extremely sick. And I think it's interesting that you don't really get the back. Like there's not another book before this that explains that. So when I started reading it, I was like, where the heck did this come from? And you find out, but it's like, it's really like first few pages, you're like, Mara's sick and she's on the cusp of death. And like, so anyways, so Ramamul and its neighboring planet, Asarian, share a system and come very close to each other in their orbits on occasion, like within a few miles of each other on occasion, such as the current moment in the book. The Asarians colonize Ramamul and use it as a major mining world. Ramamul wants to be free of the yoke of Asarian, and with the added prodding of their de facto leader, Nam Anor, is now completely revolting. Due to the close orbits, they are now in range to fire nuclear missiles at one another, and the New Republic is mediating. They have a brand new Mon Calamari battleship in between the two planets, so they're mediating. Leia is faced in these moments with her daughter growing up, which is a very interesting dynamic, and is warring with letting Jaina set out on her own, even if it puts her in danger. This is shown when Leia finds herself fighting to let her fly the Jade Saber when they are confronted by some old Z-95 headhunters, the precursor to the X-Wing, that the Asarians have hired to intercept the Jade Saber and get them to come to Asarian first instead of Ramamul. So she's going to Ramamul first to try to mediate this thing, and the Asarians, being as prideful as they are, they're like, we're going to scare her and try to steer her over to us first because we're worried about that. So Jaina flies circles around the old fighters. Like, she's being trained as a Jedi and is really good at everything, but like piloting is Jaina's thing. She is such a freaking good pilot in these books. She's a great fighter, but like it's very clear, like she's her best when she's in the cockpit of an X-Wing. The original plan for this was just to evade the fighters. However, Worth Skitter, a Jedi stationed on the Mon Calamari battleship, comes to their aid and destroys one of the headhunters. Worth is depicted as hot-headed. He's a glory hound. He just jumps into things without caring about the potential consequences, and Leia is furious. And it's here where we get a first glimpse of how Luke's new Jedi Order is nothing like that of the Old Republic, or the Republic in this case. After a Padawan finishes Luke's academy on Yavin 4, they become a Jedi Knight, and then they kind of do what the Force wills, quote unquote. They kind of do their own thing. And they use the Jedi code to interpret what to do and what not to do. They become a master when the other masters acknowledge them as such, and there is no real oversight or central coordination, which is very interesting. There's also not very many of them. So at the time this series starts, you're looking at like 100, 120, if that. It's been a very long process, and there are way more knights. There are not as many masters. So yeah, it's just a very interesting dynamic, especially knowing that some of these books were coming out at the same time as like the Phantom Menace. And so there was a big difference in the way that the Jedi were viewed in that time, but it's cool. So we changed to a new setting, Exgal 4, which is an extragalactic research post on the planet Belkadan. Belkadan is on the map, and it's the farthest one out towards the outer edges of the galaxy. It's here that we are introduced to Yeoman Carr, an undercover Yuuzhan Vong agent, and Danny Key, a scientist at the facility. It's worth noting Yeoman Carr's picture in the slide is like straight up like it's a Yuuzhan Vong. They have something called Uglith maskers and Uglith maskers, and basically what they do is you put it on and it attaches into like your individual pores, but it's essentially a flawless disguise. It's like Polyjuice Potion, but like you can take it off and put it on, and so he's under disguise of a human. They also have things. I'm gonna butcher the name, but it's like Tizo worms or something like that. And basically, they go in the ear, and it's like a live Google Translate, and it helps you understand their language and speak it and stuff like that. So he speaks like rough basic. So it's not just like a Yuuzhan Vong just like walking around doing a job. He's undercover.
He looks normal.
Yes. While he's at his post, Carr sees a blip on the long-range radar that signals the beginning of the invasion. He then contacts Nam Anor to let him know that the invasion is beginning, and then quickly disables the communications of the base. Shortly after, he checks on a beetle he brought with him to the base and confirms that it is multiplying quickly outside. The other scientists also discovered the blip and quickly think that it is an asteroid hitting the planet Helska 4. Now, Helska, the system, is also on the map here. It's a little bit farther inward, but it is on the edges of the galaxy. Regardless, a crew member suggests that they contact their command, but after some targeted persuasion by Carr, they decide against the action, as the blip could be an object from their galaxy that just rebounded back in. Or there's like a whole scientific conversation in this part of the book, and I'm like, someone's really flexing their astrophysics knowledge here. They're like, it can just rebound, it goes out, and the gravity comes back, and all this stuff. And I'm like, dude,
I would love for Neil deGrasse Tyson to read this and then have him say, "This doesn't make sense at all," like he always does with every single thing.
But it's worth noting that Yeoman Carr's role here is basically to make sure no one sees the Yuuzhan Vong coming. So he sabotages the communications, and he's trying to get people to not like pay attention to it and stuff like that.
So I just want to make a comment that wasn't it in the canon Thrawn books, the Grisk that cloaked their ship? Like they couldn't see it or something like that. The Empire was like a gravity well thing or something that would mess with. Wasn't that in one of the canon Thrawn books?
There was cloaking in the EU Thrawn books, but maybe I don't remember. It's been a while since I've read those.
I think there was, and because like remember people saying that like the Grisk are going to be like the Yuuzhan Vong, but I don't know.
The sad thing is, after reading this, Timothy Zahn pretty much handed the setup for them to be that on a silver platter, and we never got anything with it that we know of.
We're getting it. I'm still confident that the Mandoverse is going in that direction with the Thrawn,
because movie. Like there's some eerie similarities there, and I'm like, yo, this could be it. This could be really good. But after this, we go briefly back to Nam Anor, who discusses with his underlings that he's behind Mara's disease. He also mentions that he hopes to learn how Mara is doing during their meeting, which ends up going terribly. He's extremely rude to Leia in the meeting because he's the leader of Ramamul. They end up going, and he's just like, he's a butthole. He's really mean to her.
Leia's was she a senator right
She's
now?
She's an ambassador.
Ambassador? Okay. Yeah. So she doesn't
was
really
chief
have
of state for a while, and then she resigned, and she's doing ambassador stuff now, and like also being trained as a Jedi too. But like she has a lightsaber and stuff. She can use the Force some, but like really, she just kind of turns it on and like swings it. Like she can deflect blaster bolts and stuff, but like I don't know. I wouldn't take on a Sith Lord with her in my corner. Shortly after the meeting, Mara, Jaina, and Leia discuss that they couldn't perceive him at all in the Force, which is very strange. They notice that he seems to be void, essentially. There doesn't seem to be any perception of him, and it's very strange because that's not the way the galaxy normally works. But they kind of brush it off. Luke is reintroduced with Jason Solo on Coruscant, where they meet with the New Republic Advisory Council, headed by Chief of State Borsk Thalia. Now, I didn't put him on this. There is a picture of him a few slides later, so we'll get to that. But he's a Bothan. If you've seen a Bothan, you've seen Borsk.
Luke kind of look like what's the rat from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles?
Kind of Splinter. Yeah,
Splinter. What's the rat? Jeremiah, that hurt my whole soul.
It's literally been
the entire soul of mine.
It's been literally 30 years since I've watched anything Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So.
You should watch the new movie. It slaps, bro.
That's what you say.
Have you watched it yet, Andrew?
No.
You should watch it too.
Okay. Me
and Tanner went together.
Aww.
That's cool.
I think Louis went with us too, actually. I'm not sure. Maybe it was just me and Tanner. Either way, it holds up. It's dope.
Sick. So Luke is hounded by some of the counselors because of the Jedi playing Lawkeeper in the galaxy. Basically, because they're allowed to do their own thing, some of the Jedi really like keeping law and order. And they go a little too far. They're not dark side, but it's like they're like really overzealous hall monitors. And they're like taking out smuggler gangs and stuff like that, and like kind of stepping into roles in planets that they like don't really have jurisdiction over. And so counselors are not super huge fans of the Jedi right now. They have their supporters, but not all of them support them. Luke suspects, which is interesting, Luke suspects that their complaints are because the Jedi are giving smugglers a hard time. He suspects that some of the counselors have illegal dealings with them. Thus, when the Jedi attack the smugglers, it affects the counselors. Afterward, Luke and Jason discuss their differences of opinion on what the Jedi should be and whether or not the Jedi Council should be reestablished. Luke wants to reestablish the Jedi Council and wants the New Republic's help. Jason is against any sort of a council. In fact, Jason is against anything that interferes with the Jedi's self-introspection of the Force. Jason is so freaking annoying for the first half of this series. He's like he overthinks so much, and like for the first little bit, you're just like, dude, shut up and like swing your lightsaber for once. Like, stop like overthinking stuff,
over analyzing everything.
Yes, dude. He's like every like he gets a little snippy with Luke, and I'm like, dude, I would backhand you. Like, you're talking like Luke, like single-handedly like rebuilt the Jedi Order and stuff. He's like, we should be following the will of the Force. And I'm like, dude, you don't think Luke knows that? Like, anyways, it's not the point. So Jason is so freaking, anyways. And something happens later that really makes me angry, and we'll get to it when it happens. It'll probably be next week. But anyways. So this is a running fight throughout the series with Jason spending his time being philosophical, while Anakin, on the other hand, argues for the Force as a direct tool to help others. You will learn very quickly that Anakin is basically like a mini version of Luke.
This is Anakin Solo.
Solo, yes. Anakin Organa Solo. Yeah, he like
his middle name is Organa.
No, it's a hyphenated last name. Yeah.
Oh, I was like, wait, what?
But he's 15, but he's like a mini version. Like his character, his temperament, the way he views the Force is like very Luke-ish in a way. Just more immature because he's really young. So I thought that was really cool. After determining they need to get in contact with Lando to see if they can shed light on any connections between the Council and the smugglers, the Skywalker Solo family travel to the planet Debrillion, which is also on here. It's right by the word Empire, which, by the way, that's the Imperial remnant on the map.
Ooh.
Yeah. Lando uses his base of operations as a mining operation set up both on a neighboring planet, or he has the base on Debrillion. The mining is on a neighboring planet and in the system's asteroid belt. He's got the asteroid belt rigged up as well as an obstacle course where people can fly through it in specially shielded TIE fighters for a shot on a leaderboard. They call it Running the Belt. It's like a mini game. A Star Wars video game. And it's actually kind of cool. The Solo kids, of course, when they arrive, all give it a shot. Jason has the Force, but not as much of the skill. Same with Anakin. So they're probably better pilots than most, but like not Anakin Skywalker level pilots, you know. However, Jaina once again displays her piloting chops by demolishing everyone on the board by like a pretty good deal. Like she beats Kip's score, who is also a Jedi. You know, like it's pretty clear that at 16, she's like an ace pilot. It's here that Kip Duran re-enters the Star Wars narrative with his squadron, the Dozen and Two Avengers. Not a huge fan of the name, but anyways, he offers Jaina a spot on the squadron after she crushes the leaderboard and then leaves shortly after. Do we remember Kip from the Jedi Academy series where he uses the Sun Crusher to destroy entire stars and
I remember that
possessed by Exar Kun's spirit?
I vaguely remember.
Okay, well, it's the same. It's the same guy. He's a Jedi Master now. He was redeemed.
Sweet.
It took a lot.
Love that for him.
And people kind of hated him for a long time. But anyways. Meanwhile, the three members of the ex-Gal Fort research team, where Danny is, including Danny, decide to go to the ice planet Helska 4 to check out the item that came in from the outside, supposedly the outside of the galaxy. They ask Yeoman Carr if he'd like to join them, but he politely declines. He ends up contacting Prefect Dagara, who's on here, telling him to be aware of Danny and that Belkadan will soon be poisoned. Belkadan is the planet that the research facility is on, if you need a reminder.
Is it going to be poisoned with the same stuff that Mara has? Or
we'll see.
Oh.
He then goes out with another team member to fix the transmitter while they go to look at the planet, where they find some of those reddish-brown beetles. More of them now that we mentioned earlier. Carr suggests that maybe they're the issue, but the person he goes with is like, nah, let's go up there and fix it. And he's like, okay. And then they get up there and basically kills him. He cuts his line and pushes him off.
Ooh.
Yeah. And the whole reason is to keep the communications down because they would have fixed the communications. As the other team is leaving in a ship called the Space Caster, which sounds like a guitar, Danny and the other scientists see a storm moving towards their base, a massive storm. They try to establish contact with the people on the ground, but because of the communications, it's super spotty, and they barely get anything through, or so they think. They decide to move on and continue going to Helska 4 to check out this thing that came into the galaxy. However, enough of the message got through, prompting 4 of the other scientists that were still there to leave and go check out the storm. Long story short, they learn that it's a plague of toxic gas moving across the planet, killing almost everything in its path. Nothing is able to breathe. Planets are dying. It's basically killing the entire ecosystem. Only one of the 4 members makes it back from the journey, and he's killed by Yeoman Kara upon returning. So slowly but surely, Yeoman Kara has kept communications down, and now he is slowly killing off all the witnesses to what's going on the planet. Keep in mind that Belkadan, there's nothing other than this research station. It's an outer rim world. No one settled it. Like, when he's killing these witnesses, these are literally the only people that know he's there and what's going on. While in space, Kip's Dozen and 2 pick up the trail of the Space Caster, and after seeing it going toward the Helska system and thinking it's strange, they decide to follow it to make sure everything is okay. Before leaving, Kip sends out a general signal for someone to check out what's happening at Belkadan also, because they're like, why would they leave in such a hurry? The Dozen and 2 arrive at the Helska system ahead of the Space Caster, and to put it bluntly, they are decimated. They've never faced anything like this before, this biotechnology. And this is where we have this like chicken nugget looking thing in the middle of the presentation. This is what we call a coral skipper. It's named a little bit later in the book.
Do you eat?
Yeah. It's essentially, they describe it as like they think they're rocks from a distance, and then they realize they're actually fighter craft. They have little plasma launchers. They actually launch plasma, like molten plasma balls, out of the tips of the spacecraft. And the really interesting thing that's unique about these is they use something called Dovin basiles, which are these little smallish kind of heart-shaped organs that create voids, black holes. They control gravity. And so what they do is there's no engines. That's how they propel themselves through space. And it's also their shielding mechanisms. So what they do is they quite literally swallow projectiles. It's like a black hole shield, to put it bluntly. To make matters worse, as they get close to the X-Wings and the fighters in the squadron, those black holes will literally pull at their shields and sometimes pull them off. So you have these people that go in, guns blazing, that like, first of all, they think it's just debris. Come to find out, they come alive and they start attacking. And then all of a sudden, none of the conventional tactics are working. The shields are being stripped. The weapons are not what they're used to fighting against. None of their shots are hitting because they're being engulfed by these black holes. And one by one, like literally, it's so sad. Like they're dropping like flies super fast. So they're stripped. The shields are stripped away. They're dodging plasma-based projectiles and dealing with these large insect-like creatures who eat through ship metal called Grutchins. They're like literally, like, think of a big grasshopper that's a missile that kind of flies around on its own like a missile, and it just eats through metal. So on top of fighter combat, you're dealing with these. Obviously, no one in Star Wars has ever dealt with this, and literally almost the entire squadron gets taken out. In the fight, Kip's apprentice, Miko Reglia, is captured, his Jedi apprentice. So the Dozen and 2, it's like a dozen normal people and 2 Jedi. That's the whole thing. It's him and Kip. Well, Miko gets captured. Kip escapes to hyperspace along with a single A-Wing, but has 3 Grutchins on his ship. So, like, he barely gets out. After this, we switch to the main heroes splitting up. Luke and Mara go to Belkadan to respond to an odd signal coming from the planet, and kind of at Kip's, his signal. And then Han, Chewbacca, and Anakin take some goods for Lando, on a favor to Lando, to the planet Serpendal, which is also on here. The name's kind of cut off, but it's there. They're all in the same kind of neighborhood, galactic neighborhood. Prepare yourselves. That's all I'm going to say. At Serpendal, Han discovers. I read it as Han. Well, you know what's funny? We just rewatched the original trilogy. The amount of people that call him Han is like kind of funny.
Well, especially in episode 5.
Yeah. Like, anyways, Han.
Then it's annoying when George Lucas says Leia.
Oh, this is Leo. Luke and Leo.
It's so annoying.
Why don't we had him kiss? Anyways, so Han discovers the place has gone mad and quickly becomes apparent why. The moon is falling out of the sky. The moon is coming closer and closer with each orbit, and in about 7 hours from the time that they land, it will hit the planet and kill everyone. A moon, a whole moon, mind you. There's not... Starkiller isn't a thing in this universe. They're not stopping it. So Serpendal doesn't have anywhere near enough ships to evacuate anyone. So Han, being Han, tries to save the day. Anakin goes off in a speeder with the mayor of the town to try to figure out what is causing the moon to fall and hopefully stop it, while Han and Chewie load as many people as they can into the Falcon. Anakin finds what's causing the moon to fall. It's basically a giant Dovin Basil on the planet, using the gravity generator to pull the moon in. They managed to kill it with the local... the guy has to sacrifice himself, but he basically jumps down into the hole with a big thermal detonator and blows it up with himself. But at this point, the moon has already entered the atmosphere, and it's too late to stop it. Meanwhile, Luke and Mara arrive at Belkanan, only to find it covered with gas. After some difficulty, they land and begin searching and the seemingly deserted facility for signs of what happened. To make matters stranger, they notice the ground covered with dead beetles. After a brief search, they learn that all the computers are still operational, and they connect R2 into the system to download all the logs. During the download, Mara finds one of the beetles in a vial in another room, along with the journal of a scientist who never finished writing about their discoveries. It's literally like the beetles are connected, and they die before they can write it. So it's like you almost have the answer, but you don't, right? Shortly after, R2 is attacked by Yeoman Carr, who's still there. And after hearing R2 do his, scream, Mara intervenes, killing him, but it's not without difficulty. And it's here that we really begin to see how the Yuuzhan Vong are different. So first and foremost, so we have a picture of a Yuuzhan Vong warrior here in the slide. And it's worth noting that the armor that they wear... Now, if you remember the presentation that I did on the Yuuzhan Vong for the E with Andrew a while back, this isn't going to be new for you, but I feel like it's been long enough that neither of you remember.
No.
So their armor is organic armor. It's called Vondun crab armor, and it's essentially impervious to lightsabers.
Right, I remember that.
They also have what's called amphistaffs, which is the thing that he's holding, which is essentially a snake, but it acts as a whip, but it can also go rigid and be a spear, and its point is extremely sharp. Also, lightsabers can't cut through it, and the snake end of the head or into the staff can also shoot acid poison that if they bite. So if they bite you, it's you're pretty much going to die. It's like a certain death type thing, but they can spit it too. So as it's almost like they wrote it to be the perfect weapon against a Jedi, especially for the first time when a Jedi as powerful as Mara, who is also sick, can't fight to her full potential. And she's like, oh no, none of what I'm doing that I normally do is working. They also have thud bugs and razor bugs, which are literal bug projectiles, high-speed projectiles that they throw. And thud bugs are just impact weapons. And razor bugs they have razor blades on them and they cut. And there's a limited ability to it's kind of like a homing missile. There's a limited ability to kind of redirect briefly and like try to find the target. So very organic, very difficult to fight against. But she kills him. She ends up killing him. After the fight, we learn that the comet, quote unquote, landed in the Helska system. Her and Luke do. They learn that. After this, we briefly have a glimpse of Miko being broken by the telepathic war coordinator, the Yamask, which is also in the presentation. It's basically a big jelly blob brain with tentacles, but they're telepathic. So when I say
human size, or is it like just a head size?
It's big. Yeah, it's big.
Or is it like
they
bigger
range
than
in
a
size,
person?
but like think as tall as like a basketball player.
Okay.
They're pretty large, but they're telepathic, and they do the Jedi like battle meditation thing for the Yuzan Vong. They coordinate them and basically help them fight as best as they can. But they're telepathic, which means they can also communicate with other telepathic beings like Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a scene of him being broken, and so basically they bring him in. Each time they bring him in, it bombards his mind, drives him insane, brings him basically to the point of death, but then doesn't kill him, lets him recover, and they do it again. And so they're breaking him down. They're breaking the Jedi down, which is really sad to read. All right, back on Serpentall. Han.
What is this still book 1?
Yeah, a lot happens in book 1.
Okay.
Yep. Back on Serpentall, Han rushes to pick up Anakin, leaving Chewie back at the port. They go back to pick up Chewie after he gets Anakin, and Anakin jumps off the Falcon to help Chewie as he tries to free a trapped shuttle. At this point, they're facing gale force winds and constant earthquakes because of the gravitational anomalies. The two manage to free the shuttle and start heading back to the Falcon. A piece of debris clips Anakin, and Chewie grabs him and tosses him to Han. He then stops to rescue someone trapped under some debris. Anakin is fine after a moment, but the winds are now hurricane force, and the Falcon can't hover in place anymore. Han orders Anakin to go hold the ship steady so that Chewie can make it aboard. But the winds are too strong, and Anakin realizes they are out of time. If he stays any longer, no one will make it out. So Anakin flies them out while Han is screaming to go back, and Chewbacca turns away to face the falling moon. He's killed screaming at the moon, arm raised in sheer defiance.
Okay, that sucks. Chewie's dead? I think I remember that from the Yuzong Vong thing.
Yeah.
Vaguely that Chewie died.
He's gone, baby. Yeah, there's nothing I can do aside from like reading it.
But okay, did they find the body or no? If there's no body in Star Wars, maybe he's coming back.
No.
Oh, okay.
Not true. That's impossible.
A moon fell on him.
What?
There's no. Yeah. So, I'm not going to go into this, but it's worth a read because Chewie, you get the sense that he's very at peace. Like he knows he's okay. He's like, I saved Anakin. That's good. Like I made good on my life debt. And then
so glad this isn't canon.
There's a moment where he turns and like he's like, all right, I'm gonna face this thing defiantly, and he's like yelling at the moon as it comes down on him, and like it's just very Chewie to the end, to his last breath. And
can't rip the arms out of his socket.
No,
the moon.
It's a moon. It's like our moon colliding with the Earth. So yeah, there were talks about characters to kill, and after much debate, there was some people wanted to kill Han, some people wanted to kill Luke, and after much debate, they decided on Chewie because I quote, "It's always hard when they kill the family dog."
I was going to say
some authors said that.
That's harder for me to process than if Han would have died.
Yeah, truthfully. So it's like it makes the most sense because like you can't really tell the story from Chewie's perspective as well anyways because he can't really talk in basic. Yeah. So like it makes sense.
Right.
And it works really well because he's a character that touches the lives of every single other. So like it's a bit we'll talk about the loss. But anyways, I read that and I sat there and I was like, oh, he's like, he's not Star Wars gone. He is gone. Like this is the moment where, as a reader, first book, you're like, they're not pulling any punches anymore. Like they have officially killed off a main character, and now the galaxy doesn't feel safe anymore.
Right.
Like, it has a profound effect on you as a reader when you're reading that, because up until now, they get knocked down, but they get back up again.
Right.
Down, back up again. Anyways, so
that's how book one ends, or is that pretty much at the end?
We're still in book one.
I don't know, but is that like towards the end, or is this like how far?
It is towards ish. It's like 2/3 of the way through.
Okay.
Just know the other ones are going to go quicker, so it's not going to be a 4-hour episode. So back in the Falcon, as they're flying away, Han blames Anakin for Chewie's death, like really harshly. And this is also, and Anakin is like, because he witnessed it from the Falcon's viewport, like he's also as a 15-year-old kid too in shock and is like grieving too hard to even argue back. And so it's just like really sad image of Han clearly just broken to pieces and lashing out in anger at his son, who is also broken to pieces and is taking it, and the moment is worse because he's having to take it and he can't say anything to make it better. And it's just like, it's gut wrenching because like you've never seen Han like this. Like, this is the first time like we've really seen a Star Wars character. Like, Luke loses Ben, he loses his hand, but like we've never seen this much grief in a Star Wars character before.
Well, and what about when Wicket, his buddy, dies in episode 6?
I just rewatched that and it hurt my heart. But this, I don't know. It's I don't know. It's different. This is a little different because you're like, you feel for Han, but also like you want to be like, dude, shut up, like stop. But like he doesn't know how to process grief really well. And then Anakin's just there, and Anakin was the one who had to make the decision to leave, and so so they're flying away, and there's a whole caravan of ships leaving Serpentine trying to get away. Come to find out, Kit makes it out of hyperspace. He's barely alive. In the book, he actually has to seal his pilot's suit and go extravehicular, which means he's in space. Like the cockpit's open in space, and he's in the X-wing, but like he barely has any air left, so he's like on the brink of death. But they reconnect with Han. And they get him aboard and they save him. And between Han and Luke and Mara and everyone now knows that there's a pretty big threat. Now they're on the same page. So the Yuuzhan Vong send a small fleet of coral skippers to harass the refugees from Serpentine, and also to attack Debrillion, where Lando is, and also where everyone is going to regroup. A fierce battle takes place in the skies above Debrillion. After seeing the Solo children eventually in space with no shields, they're in those modified TIE fighters that they used earlier. They save another pilot. The coral skippers begin overwhelming them, and they're instructed to go back to the safety of the planet's atmosphere. It's early in these books. It's very like the numbers against them are overwhelming. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers versus these ragtag groups that were completely caught off guard. Anakin, however, has the idea to run the coral skippers through the asteroid belt that they run before. They go in and they connect their minds in a force meld, and basically kind of they do super senses, like they have more eyes and more ears, and they connect, and it works for a little while, but the link doesn't last very long. Jason can't hold it together super long. And Anakin soon finds himself spinning toward an asteroid. He pulls the hyperdrive lever at the last second to get out of there and ends up in a random part of space. So he saves his life, but like he's gone. Han and Leia are furious about this, but eventually they find Anakin by following a message he sends through the Force that Leia picks up on. Meanwhile, Luke and 3PO investigate the downed coral skipper that they found from the battle. They do eventually win, but they suffer heavy losses, and so they're investigating this coral skipper, and they learn a lot about the Yuuzhan Vong technology. It's biotechnology. It's organic. It's alive. The Dothan Vassal things with the gravity generators, but they get their first glimpse into like, oh, this is what we're up against. It is after this that Luke plans to go back to Helska 4. So one thing that I forgot to mention is that him and Mara, they went to Helska 4 briefly after leaving the lab. And Luke basically almost gets shot down, and she picks him up and leaves really, really quickly. And they're like, "Oh no, we've got a problem." It's a very brief scene. So he's like, "We're gonna go back and we're gonna do some more reconnaissance." And he's like, he asks Lando for a special mining ship because Helska 4, what you need to know, is covered in ice. It's like a ball of ice, and underneath the ice is very cold ocean. Until you get much, much farther down, and there's like tons of volcanic activity and stuff like that. But it's basically ice surrounding water. And so he's like, "Give me a mining ship that can get through the ice, and then I'm going to go under and I'm going to do spy things," right? Well, in classic Star Wars Skywalker Solo fashion, Janin and Jace steal the ship before he can do it, and they leave a message with R2, and they're like, "We're doing it. We're going to be the saviors of this thing because we're 16 and we know everything." Meanwhile, a New Republic Star Destroyer arrives at Debrillion and also goes to Helska 4. By the way, really interesting thing. The New Republic just like uses Star Destroyers now because they haven't had a chance to like really build out their fleet a ton. And so they just got a bunch of Star Destroyers after the war ended. And now they're kind of like their capital ships, which is kind of cool.
That is kind of cool.
Star Destroyers are the best. So.
Yeah, I love Star Destroyers. So it shows up, they have a brief meeting, and then the Star Destroyer captain's like, "Let's go, let's give it, let's take it to him." Like everyone's pissed because of Serpentine, and like Chewie's gone, and everyone's mourning, and thousands and thousands of people have been killed in like the span of 2 days, and they're like, let's go. And Leia's like, maybe we should wait. Maybe we should get more people. And the Star Destroyer captain's like, "Nah, yee bo, let's go." Like, raise hell, praise Dale, we're out. So he leaves. He goes to fight the new intruders. Jason manages to infiltrate and rescue Danny, the trap scientist, who gets trapped when the scientists arrive. And while in disguise, but then runs into trouble while fighting the Yuzan Vong warriors on his way out. So they got one of those cloaker things, and it disguises him to get in, and he like swims around a little bit and he finds her and everything. And it's like, cool. He's like, I felt someone in the Force, but you're not it. And she's like, "Yeah, there's a Jedi here and we got to go find him." And he's like, "Okay, let's do it." And then crap hits the fan pretty fast. And all of a sudden he's fighting these warriors who are far more intense than anything he's had to fight. And like, to be fair, the Solo kids are like really strong warriors despite their age. Like, they've been trained from birth as Jedi. They train directly under Luke and Mara, and they fight so well that you really forget how old they are at some moments because they fight as well as adults,
right? Because
they're just that strong in the Force. But even still, the technology and everything, it begins to overwhelm Jason, and he basically, and it comes to a point where all he can do is like deflect, and he can't really gain ground enough to attack, and he's like, "I don't know what to do." But then to help them escape, Miko sacrifices himself and dies in the process, the captured Jedi. So he's like, I'm gonna give you guys a way out. Go, I'll take care of this stuff. So that's two people that have already we have a main character and like kind of a central character that has died. In orbit, the situation with the Star Destroyer turns bad real fast, and it's ultimately destroyed. The captain should have waited. But basically, the Dovin Vassal, one of the big Dovin Vassals in the planet, pulls the Star Destroyer down, and it's destroyed. The captain goes down with the ship. Thousands of people die. The death count is just massively increasing super fast. The heroes that are still alive, the core group of heroes is still alive, of course. Jason and Danny are alive. They basically limp back to Debrillion. It's clear to Luke that they must strike back immediately while they're least expected to end the threat once and for all, he says. So they devise a plan involving 6 of the massive shield ships that Lando used during the Heir to the Empire books. I don't know if you remember those, but they like big umbrellas that repel energy because they were right by a sun. I don't know if you remember that.
Sounds familiar.
It's a callback to Heir to the Empire. So Basically, I'm not gonna lie, I had to reread this a few times, and I still don't completely understand it. But basically, because the Yamask is releases energy, and the Dovin Vassals release energy, what they're gonna do is they're gonna put the shield ships around the planet and basically reflect it back at the planet, causing like super quick evaporation of the ice. And like the whole idea is to get the planet to absolute zero super fast and start off a chain reaction so that the planet basically explodes. Don't read into it too much. All you need to know is it works. The planet explodes. So they go back and they take like the vast majority of the Yuzan Vong force that was like the forward advance force that was on the planet with them. So the story wraps up with Nam Amor, who is fuming and fermenting. Like he's super mad because of the loss, and he's fermenting rebellions elsewhere. Because like his whole thing is like he kind of goes in and he infiltrates, and he's like, let's spur up this group of people's prejudices and angers, and like let's get them riled up, and like let's start civil wars. And basically, he's like weakening population centers so that they're weaker when the invasion happens. Which this is a very interesting part about these enemies is they're very complex, and they're honestly extremely smart in the way that they infiltrate. So anyways, but he's super mad. His agents have been killed. And while that's super unfortunate, it's very clear that more of his people are on the way. In the final paragraphs, we see Han deeply reflecting on the bubble of protection he always assumed his family was in that was shattered by Chewie's death. And I'm going to read this part really quickly because I thought it was very emblematic of the way that I felt reading this too. Let me see. He says, I had built this bubble around us. All around us, he's talking to Leia. All around us, you, me, Chewie, the kids, Luke, Mara, even Lando, heck, even the stupid droids. We were all in it, you know. In it, safe, in it, and a safe, cozy family. She says, invulnerable, and Han nods. Nothing could hurt us, could really hurt us. He went on, and then his voice broke up, and he just shook his head and blinked away the tears. And when that didn't work, he wiped them away and stared out at the wobbling Serpentine, the remains, because they went back to try to find Chewie, and it's not a thing. He said this should have. Let's see. He knew that Leia understood, and he didn't have to say more. And even though it made no sense, she didn't disagree. This should have logically happened a long time ago, a long, long time ago. And if not to Chewie, then certainly to one of the others, Han perhaps most of all. They had been living on the very edge of disaster for so long, fighting battles literally for decades, running from bounty hunters and assassins. Even the first time Han and Leia had met on the Death Star of all places, and in the gallows of the place to boot. So many times it had seemed one or more of them should have died, and yet in a strange way, that close flirting with death had only made Han think of them all the more invulnerable. They could dodge any blaster or piggyback on the side of an asteroid or climb out of a garbage chute but not anymore. Not now. The bubble of security was gone so suddenly, blown apart by a diving moon. And so it like literally ends on him reflecting about there's more. But so yeah, that's the first book. There you go.
Man, the brilliant people died in this book.
Oh, shut up. Oh, get out.
I've been holding that one in for a long time.
So yeah, this first book is very action-packed and very heavy with losses. And it ends on a really depressing note.
Sounds like it. Okay, so quick question.
Yes.
When they wrote this book, was like the fans and everyone aware that there's going to be 19 of them? Or was it like, here's the book, and then they're like, wait, hold up. You know what I mean?
I don't know if they were aware that there was going to be 19, but there was from the onset, there was very much like this is going to be a saga.
Gotcha. So they're aware, like they weren't just going to get this book about Chewie dying and then that was the end of the book.
Yeah.
Imagine if they didn't make any more and that was it.
By the way, I feel really bad for the writer.
Yeah, the writer who had the
because so he had written about this. He had been writing this book as his brother, who was his best friend, was dying of terminal illness. And so a lot of the grief aspects of Han are very much reflected in the writing from him.
Oh, dang.
And his brother dies a few weeks before the book releases, and then he gets blasted with hate mail. Because everyone thinks he decided to kill Chewie when it wasn't actually his decision. It was a group decision by the story group. And so even then, Star Wars fans are kind of the way that they are now. And you know what I'm saying. But yeah, I feel like when they were going through this part of the documentary series, every single other writer mentioned that they felt bad for him.
Well, yeah,
because he got more hate than he ever deserved for that.
For something that he didn't fully choose. And then on top of that, he lost someone. And then maybe that's also why Mayor Jade, that whole having an illness, probably was also, he felt that too, because he knew someone that was having this illness.
Yeah.
So when writers write like that, that's so intense. And then to lose that person, the book comes out, and then you're going to get hate. Like, you probably knew it was going to come.
No, back then, I don't know if you knew people.
It was before the Phantom Menace.
Yeah, no one knew Star Wars hate yet.
Yeah. This was originally, let me see.
Before the Phantom. Oh, yeah.
93, this came out, so.
Actually, sorry, it was 99.
So the same time.
It wasn't 93, it was 99. My bad. 93 to 99.
Okay, you should probably fix that slide before you send it
to me. I will. 93 to 99.
Oh, dang, that makes it even crazier. 19 books in 4 years? Holy smokes.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, yeah. So, I was 2 years old when this book came out.
No, 99.
Wait.
He said originally 93, but it was actually 99.
To when?
2003.
2003.
19 books in 4.
Never mind. I was not 3 years old. Now he's double checking.
Yeah, October 5th, 1999. So you were negative 2 years old.
99.
You were 10 years old.
No, I was.
You were 4 years old.
Old enough. How about that?
I was 8.
So, anyways, heavy hitter of a first book, and again, nothing compares to reading it. Like,
right.
I can imagine, dude.
There's just so much.
That hurt me, and I just heard you tell me that Chewie died.
Yeah. All right. Any questions?
I don't have any specific questions, but Drew,
good.
You good?
I'm just depressed about Chewie still.
You and a lot of other fans, let me tell you.
Well,
you know what's not depressing?
What's that, Andy?
I mean, it could be either, depending on how you're feeling, Jeremiah, it could be one of two things.
Yeah.
It could either be the next book and we move on, or depending on how fun you're feeling, it could be everyone's favorite beverage.
Like coffee and or tea?
And or tea?
And
or
space
and or tea?
Or
oh. Yeah, coffee and or tea.
Because they sell two different. We've been doing this ad for how long, and I say that same thing every week.
Dude,
so
I'm a coffee fanatic. What can I
say? You want one last hot beverage before a moon gets thrown on top of you.
Jeez.
Oh Lord, come on!
Oh my God,
too soon.
Too soon.
With Wesley Andrews Coffee and Teas direct to door shipment, it can get there pretty fast. So
before the moon falls.
Before the moon falls. Check out Wesley Andrews Coffee and Tea out in Minneapolis, Minnesota for a great deal on some coffee.
Hey everyone, Andrew here. I'm pleased to tell you that the sponsor of today's episode is Wesley Andrews Coffee and Tea. If you don't know anything about Wesley Andrews, you definitely should. They're an award-winning coffee roaster and shop in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and they make fantastic coffee. The awesome thing is that whether you live in the Twin Cities or not, you can get their coffee beans delivered straight to your door by ordering them online. They even have a subscription service that ensures you never run out of amazing coffee. If you've been looking for some new coffee to try or a way to elevate your normal coffee routine, now's your chance. Head over to wesleyandrews.cc, use the code Empire Radio, that's with a capital E and a capital R with no space at checkout, to get 15% off your first purchase of any bags of coffee or a coffee subscription. I can't think of a better deal. Get 15% off some great coffee, support a small business, and support your favorite Star Wars podcast. In the words of Emperor Palpatine, do it.
Do it.
Do it. It's very generous of him, huh, Drew?
It's so generous. Oh, I forgot to get water. Well,
dang, dude.
Well, buckle up, Buttercup, because...
Buckle up, Buttercup.
Next slide. Book 2.
Book 2, baby. You guys ready?
Yep.
All right. We're going into Dark Tide #1, part 1 of 2, Onslaught. So the next 4 books are 2 duologies. Broken into 2 parts. All right. You ready?
What is that crab thing?
Oh, you're going to find out today. Let me tell you, God, it makes me uneasy. I'm not going to lie. That picture makes me uneasy. It's just because I know what it's for. Anyways, it's called an implanter. In case you're curious.
Ooh,
oh yeah, baby. Oh yeah, baby. We're getting into some weird stuff. All right. Dark Tide 1 Onslaught. The book begins with Leia Organa Solo speaking to the New Republic Senate, and the Senate basically waves off the threat since it was quote unquote taken care of. Classic government. You guys did it. And it's worth noting that I think in Star Wars, a lot of people at various points in canon and the EU kind of write off what's going on in the Outer Rim. And you're like, how could you? It's not that far. But if you think about it, it really is that far. You know what I'm saying? So like, there was a part of me that was like, how could you discount this? But then it's at the other end of the galaxy.
Well, if you think about it, like people discount things that happen in the world all the time because it's
a state away or something.
Yeah, honestly, yeah, just like so it makes sense.
So, anyways, they end up accusing Leia of actually making a power grab, which is kind of wild to me. But since the Yuuzhan Vong were defeated, Invector Prime, quote unquote, defeated, the Senate has decided they were the only ones and are going to bury their heads in the sand, essentially. The only person who comes to Leia's aid is Elgos Akla, a Kamasi senator and Leia's friend. So Elgos is here. This is what a Kamasi looks like. Did not know what that was until this book. Well, excuse me, until the Thrawn duology, because he's in that. But there you go. He's like a Furby anteater looking thing.
Furby.
Anyways, so they go back to they decide to go back to the Outer Rim on a fact-finding mission to basically prove like, this is actually a problem. Before they go, Han makes his only appearance in the book, and he's mourning Chewie's death and basically drinking himself into a hole. It's honestly really sad. We then get introduced to Gavin Darklighter, who is on the slide as well. You might recognize the name. Anybody recognize the name Darklighter?
I remember hearing the name. I don't.
Y'all.
By the looks of it, he drives. He flies an X-Wing.
He drives that X-Wing all up and down the hills. But Darklighter? Who else in Star Wars canon has the last name Darklighter? It was in the last half of the movie, so it wasn't trash, Jeremiah.
Oh, I don't.
Yeah, I remember Biggs.
Oh, really?
That was his last name? Did it say it in the movie?
I don't know. I just knew it was his last name from something.
Oh.
It's his long. It's like they're cousins.
Darklighter.
Anyways, we're introduced to Gavin, who is the current leader of Rogue Squadron. For those of you who are familiar with the EU, you know Rogue Squadron is a deep cut. They've been there since very early on in the EU, and they're like the elite X-Wing squadron, essentially.
You think we're gonna get that movie?
Wasn't that supposed to be a movie?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Probably
and
not.
And that director lady says, "Oh, it still hasn't been canceled.
It's still in the works."
And yet, people wonder why we don't like canon as much. Anyways, so they're fighting in simulations, and he lasts 25 seconds against the Coral Skippers in the new simulation, which is apparently much better than others did. This book really drives how much of a threat the Yuuzhan Vong are because of their weapons and their ruthlessness, basically tailor-made to be enemies of the New Republic. They're shown as a massive threat, but beatable with changes to tactics rather than a radical new weapon or tech, which is refreshing because every other thing is like, we got a new super weapon, we got new blasters, we got, new clone armor. Whereas here, it's like new weapons aren't going to cut it. You have to think differently. You have to fight differently. The plan to defeat the black hole shields is to have their fighters pump out a ton of low power shots while the enemy fighters try to suck them all up with the black holes. They find the weakness and they basically overload it with low power ones and then hit it with higher power shots. They actually call this stutter fire and literally set up new firing modes in the X-Wings. Like they have a stutter fire mode that they like apply, and it's actually it's super cool. Gavin meets up with Admiral Crefet, a Bothan who is also on here, and a relative of Borsk Phalia, who I think they're like cousins or something like that. They're semi-closely related. Crefet and the rest of the military have been forbidden from going looking for the Yuuzhan Vong because the government doesn't believe they exist. But he's planning on taking his ship, the Rau'Rust, pictured here, out to it's a capital ship. It's pretty big. Out to the rim to fight pirates. And if he finds proof for Leia that the Yuuzhan Vong are still active, well, he finds it. If you can't tell, that was very intentional. Meanwhile, Luke holds a Jedi conclave at his academy on Yavin 4. The Jedi have split into roughly 2 camps based on ideology. This is where we meet Corran Horn. Now, Corran Horn, if you are familiar with the book I, Jedi, is the main character in that book. It is an expanded universe book, so I don't expect either of you to really be familiar with him.
I always see it pop up on my Facebook feed. Like, that's why
you asked me about that.
I did. And so I was curious because it always pops up. So like, is that just the algorithm saying it's a popular thing that people like clicking on? So
yeah, it's roughly the events of the Jedi Academy trilogy kind of told from his perspective, from what I've heard. I really like Corran. Corran is like, he's not the best fighter, but like, he's good. He's good. He's not Luke. He's not like Skywalker Solo good, but like he's pretty freaking good. But his thing is like, he's really smart in like a MacGyver sort of way. Like he's like rough, like he's like kind of outdoorsy, and like he was Corsair, so he was Corellian security for them. He actually flew in Rogue Squadron for a while, so he's a really good pilot. But he's like the guy, he's like the Bear Grylls, can kind of survive in any situation. He's tough, but he's like he's also very kind too. He's like Qui-Gon Jinn mixed with Bear Grylls and MacGyver. It's really strange.
He's your father-in-law.
Kind of. But like, if you read it, you would understand. But he's a really good character. I like him a lot. So Corran Horn, his camp has the Jedi taking a more passive stance, much more on Luke's side. And Kip, good old Kip, his camp takes a more active role in the galaxy. They're low-key arrogant and disrespectful. As the two decides to debate on what to do with the Yuuzhan Vong, Kip is all for hunting down the invaders, while Corran wants to defend the populace. After the debate, Luke ends up striking a balance and sending everyone on different missions. Luke and Jason go back to Belkadan, the planet from the first book, and try to figure out just what the Vong are doing there. Corran and Ganner Rhysode, that's a really weird name to read. I just call him Ganner. One of Kip's quote unquote handsome and arrogant. They make a point to like talk about how like conventionally attractive this guy is in the book, which is really strange, but he's also really arrogant and, interestingly enough, really powerful. And I think he's arrogant because he knows he's powerful. But he goes with Corran to a place called Bimial. It's a world on the rim where a research team has gone missing, and they're going to go look for them. Finally, Mara and Anakin are going to Dantooine so Mara can meditate on her illness and heal. Leia finds her way back to Dubrillion. The Yuuzhan Vong are back and laying siege to the planet. The Rau'Rust happens to show up and they prepare an evacuation. Leia has arranged for some help from the planet Agamar, but they still have nowhere near enough ships to evacuate everyone. They stuff the ships they do have to overcapacity and get ready to run back to Agamar. During this, Jaina Solo ends up joining the legendary Rogue Squadron, and kind of sets her on that path, her piloting path. During the evacuation, the Yuuzhan Vong demonstrate that their ships can make gravity wells and prevent the refugees from a refugee fleet from running to Agamar. So they head to the closest planet, which they can make it to before their overtaxed life support systems fail, which happens to be Dantooine.
Yay.
Wink, 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 wink. So if you can't tell, all roads are beginning to lead there.
By the way, when I was looking at that map on the bottom right, I thought it said Tom Cruise for a second.
No, not quite.
Tyon Cluster.
He's just in there running. Meanwhile, Luke and Jason return to Belkadan to find it a changed planet. While it was previously covered with toxic gas and uninhabitable, it's pretty much back to normal within 2 weeks. So this is about 2 weeks post the first book. They find the Yuuzhan Vong have the beginnings of a shipyard set up where they are growing coral skippers, which is, again, they grow their technology, which is really interesting. And the entire thing is run by coral implanted slaves. The coral controls them against their will. This is a really gruesome part of the story because, like, it describes them as growths growing out of their skin, and it just controls them, and they're like in pain all the time.
Exciting.
Oh yeah. It's just, like I said, it's a darker Star Wars story. They only had, let's see. Jason wants to free the slaves right then and there, but Luke stops him because he recognizes they can't do anything for all the slaves. They only have a tiny scout ship, and getting back the information is more important. Jason considers this pragmatic approach wrong, but follows his orders. That is until he has a dream that same night about him freeing all the slaves, and he interprets it as a vision and decides to sneak out and try it, and it goes horribly wrong. He kills like one or two Yuuzhan Vong, and he's like looking at some of the slaves, and he's like, y'all, like, go. Hey, I'm here. Do your thing. And they don't move. They're afraid of him. And then all of a sudden, because they don't react the way he thinks they are, because he's young and naive, he gets attacked again and gets captured by the Yuuzhan Vong.
Exciting.
And then he's hooked up to what they call the Embrace of Pain. Now, the Embrace of Pain is an interesting device. So here's something about the Yuuzhan Vong. They love pain. Death is they revere death. They have a system of, they're religious zealots. They have a very strict system of gods and goddesses, and their whole thing is that the whole point of life is pain, and the only release of pain is death. And so you are meant to sacrifice and suffer and be as tough and as brutal as you possibly can until your death. And the goal is to have as honorable and as righteous of a death as possible. It's very, very interesting. And so this Embrace of Pain is a device that is hooked up to someone's body, and it postures you in a way that is very uncomfortable. Like you are never able to get true relief in the way that you're postured. And on top of that, it kind of hooks up into your nervous system, and it creates excruciating pain for you. And the more you struggle against it, the harder it kind of pushes back against you. So Jason is hooked up to this, and he talks about, not being able to be free from the pain long enough to really focus on the Force and like all these things. Well, while he's there, he's implanted with a coral implant in his face. It's like right like on his cheek or something, and that's what that implanter is, that spider looking thing. Nice. Yeah, they come up and it's like, and they like rip into his skin.
How big are
they? Like a good sized dog.
What?
Like a good sized dog.
Oh, did you say it was in his face?
No, they put the implant in his face.
Oh.
Wait, so it's just like...
They opened his skin and put it underneath his skin into his face.
Oh, I thought you said the crab thing was this thing put inside the...
Okay. Yeah. So what you do is they put the implant in, it grafts to the bone, and then it grows underneath your skin.
Is it what that little... looks like a stinger thing?
Dude, I don't know how they work, man. I just hate them.
It's like a Great Dane walking around. Imagine that.
I don't want to. Luckily for Jason, though, Luke comes to rescue him the next morning. This scene, not gonna lie, this is kind of the definition of BA. So Jason's in there. He's in a hut. He's hooked up and he's hanging and he can't get out. And he's like trying to move his lightsaber. And like he has just enough focus through the pain to like see it like wobble a little bit. And then at one point, it shoots up and out the open door. And he's like, I didn't do that. Like, what the heck? And he's like trying to get it back and it won't come back to him. And then in the distance, backlit by the sun, he sees Luke dual wielding lightsabers walking up slowly. This is like pinnacle. Oh yeah, pinnacle Luke, Jedi Master Luke. And he's just taking the Yuuzhan Vong out left and right. Like he rescues him in like the coolest way. He uses the Force to like pelt stones and stuff. And then what I think is really interesting is they show how exhausted he is after engaging with the Force that directly. Which I think is a very interesting dynamic of showing the weight of using the Force that way, more so than it just being kind of this magical power that you can do whatever you want with and not really feel anything physically. So anyways, it's really cool. It's a really cool moment. He's like blocking and somersaulting and floating and stuff. And he rescues him.
Also, by the way, if you're a bad guy listening and you capture a good guy, don't leave the person's weapon like always in like the same room as every single movie, every single like.
This boy's over here.
Keep it away. Lock it up somewhere that they can't find it. Like every.
You want to be a bad guy? Do it properly.
Yeah, like there's ways to do it. Like.
I just love that it flies out and into Luke's hand, and he's like slicing. Anyway, so Luke has his own vision of danger on Belkadan or Dantooine, and they are also heading to Dantooine.
Bum, bum, bum.
While this is all happening, Ganner and Corran arrive at Bemiel. It's a small B plot, but basically they end up finding the scientists who seem to have discovered the remains of a dead Yuuzhan Vong. From some decades prior, implying that they've been scouting the galaxy for much longer than anyone realized. Two of the scientists get taken, and Ganner and Corran end up rescuing them. In the process, Corran kills two members of the Shy domain. They call like the clans domains. So Shy is the family, essentially. But he's almost at death's door because of the fight. Ganner ends up coming back for him in the last moment, saving his life. Shidao Shy, who is also on the thing right here, a male Yuuzhan Vong commander, is later notified of the killing of his kinsmen and the stealing of his ancestors' remains. Come to find out, it's one of his ancestors. Shy, overcome by vengeance, vows that he will taste the blood of the Jedi, which is how they pronounce Jedi because they can't pronounce it in basic very well. So they call him Jedi. The main point of Mara and Anakin's time on Dantooine is Mara teaching Anakin a lesson that she helped Luke learn in the previous Hand of Thrawn books. I was going to read this, but because of time, basically, it's honestly like a really good conversation. Like she walks him through the realization so effectively. And it's basically like you have to stop using the Force for every little thing. Moving boxes, setting things up, moving things around, like all this stuff. Because the more you use the Force in those kind of throwaway, flippant ways, the less you can hear its voice leading you in the moments that are more important. And also, by not using the Force, you not only learn what your limits are, what your physical body is capable of, but by not intervening immediately with other people flippantly, you also learn what the other people around you are capable of. And so it gives you a better sense of when to intervene, when you know you need to help. It's just like, it's so well written in the book. Cause I was like, I need to go back and reread this a few times. Like, this is really good. So anyways.
Isn't that something though that I feel like I've heard that before. I don't know if that was something that George Lucas said or wasn't it like maybe you mentioned about the novelization of Revenge of the Sith, like right after Anakin pledges himself to Sidious, isn't like something like Anakin didn't move something and Palpatine was like, it's okay for you to use the Force to do something so minuscule or something like that. Wasn't that something you said?
I don't remember.
That like Anakin was like, or like right away was like, didn't do something easy with the Force because he's like, oh, Jedi, we're not supposed to overuse it like that.
I don't
or
remember.
Something like that.
I just thought it was interesting because like Luke literally learned a similar. She taught Luke the same lesson in those books. Again, Hand of Thrawn books, really good. But of course, the Yuuzhan Vong arrive on the planet and they end up being chased for multiple days. Her and Anakin, with Anakin basically fending them off over the course of multiple days throughout the woods, like pretty single handedly. Like he's kind of powerful. Not gonna lie. And before they're finally overrun, and it's at that point when, right as they're being overrun, Luke and Jason show up and they save them. So everyone now has regrouped on Dantooine. The refugees are offloaded here so the ships can take half back and then return to get the other half. However, the Yuuzhan Vong have followed them there, and now they must make a stand. A massive battle ensues. Seeing this is the onslaught of the title. Seeing the Yuuzhan Vong throw wave after wave of slave reptilian soldiers at the heroes. This is what the Chazrak are on this slide. This is the reptilian soldiers that they bring with them, that they just kind of use them as cannon fodder. During the fight, Luke shows off one of his most impressive feats of the Force, where he plays tug of war with a Yuuzhan Vong Dovin Basil and gets it to hit itself with its own black hole. It's kind of wild. Hold on. So this I do want to read. It leaves him so drained he passes out. Dang, but keep in mind, he's using the Force against a black hole, like an actual void. Anyways, so Luke sank back into the chairs and closed his eyes. He took a deep breath and reached out with the Force. He let his sense of things ride above the frayed one's jagged profile and vectored in towards the vehicle. He got no solid sense of it directly, because here's the thing. Here's what we've been learning over the course of time. The Yuuzhan Vong are completely removed from the Force.
Right.
They have no Force sensitivity, and Force users cannot sense them. They're literally, it's like looking into nothingness. Yeah. So, and their vehicles are like that too. He felt the emptiness of the vehicle. Instead, he uses that emptiness as a way to point the search, as a waypoint to search out the void. And as it is formed, the black hole blossomed fully in the Force. The void that the vehicle's Dovin Basils created to intercept the missiles that were heading its way was a gravitic anomaly that had substance in the real world. Tiny threads of the Force leaked into it as insects and birds and bats and bugs were pulled into it. Luke used their vanishing life traces and the very currents in the air that the void created to define the void. He traced its edges, knew exactly where it was, and knew how powerful it was. He opened himself to the Force more fully than he had in years. He sought more power than he had when freeing his nephew. The Force flooded into him, at once molten metal hot, yet soothing as a cool rain. It swirled through him, filling every cell of his body, freeing him from fatigue, sharpening his mind. Luke reached out with that power and latched onto the void that the Yuuzhan Vong vehicle had created. He pushed a bit and then tugged, in nanoseconds, getting a feel for the power of the Dovin Basils that exerted control over the void. He almost smiled, since that amount of power was nothing compared to the Force, but he stopped himself short of pride in that fact. So then he has R2 juke some missiles that they're sending that way. R2 sharply and fed the proton torpedoes a new set of data. The torpedoes twisted in flight and arced toward the sky, flying up and over the void. Then they turned again and fell toward the ground, aimed at the vehicle's spine. Immediately, the Dovin Basils started to shift the void to cover this new attack vector. Luke fed the Force into his hold on the void, thwarting them. The pressure increased, and still Luke held it unmoving. The torpedoes got closer and closer. The Dovin Basils pulled harder, and when their effort reached a new peak, Luke let the void slip toward toward intercepting the proton torpedoes. The Dovin Basils devoted their efforts to sliding the void into place, which required some lateral movement and shortening the arc over which the void would travel. As they brought it close to the vehicle, Luke pushed with the force. Since the Dovin Basils were already tugging the void back toward the vehicle, they were not prepared to have the travel accelerated. The void crashed into the vehicle, striking it mid-spine. The long vehicle bent backward as both ends became sucked into the black hole. It flowed like thick liquid, all the sharp horns and bony plates becoming fluid as they curved up and over the void's event horizon. In less than an eye blink, the vehicle had been consumed by the void, leaving a huge gap in the Yuzhan Vong formation.
Dang.
Pretty crazy.
Yeah. Like, dude, I was like, this is EU Luke. So the enemy gets into some of the enemy gets into the encampment, and they take losses so bad that the survivors get into the remaining ships and take off, not worried about being overtaxed, the life support systems being overtaxed. One infiltrator manages to kill Leia's Nogri bodyguard in the process, which is a huge deal considering how dangerous the Nogri are. Upon making it to space, the fleeing ships find a Yuzhan Vong ship waiting for them with powered-up gravity wells, and all hope is lost until the Rao Roost returns to aid and saves the day. In the end, the New Republic is forced to admit that the Yuzhan Vong are a threat and to not downplay what's going on.
Good.
It's about time.
All right. That was the end of Dark Tide 1. You ready for Dark Tide 2?
And this is book 3, or this is
3?
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's do it. Oh dang.
Oh yeah, there's some fun stuff in this.
Juicy. I was looking at that ship.
They're really freaking cool. They're really cool. The story begins on Coruscant, a short period of time from the last book, and Corran is still somewhat recovering from almost dying. After some meetings and another Jedi conclave, the Jedi are still arguing among themselves about what to do. Luke decides to give everyone marching orders. Again, it's worth noting here that there is no Jedi Council. They listen to Luke out of respect and seniority, but they still mostly get to do what they want. Meanwhile, the New Republic is unwilling to sanction Jedi activities against the Yuzhan Vong, so Corran accepts his old commission with the New Republic and goes on a quote-unquote scouting mission to Garki, an occupied world, which is on the map. Jason Solo, Ganna Rysode, and some Nogri commandos also come along with him. Jaina is still flying with Rogue Squadron at this point. Leia is going to Bastion, also on here, which is the Imperial capital, to try to get help from the Imperial remnant. Han is getting drunk.
Still?
He's been doing this for 2 books now.
Yeah, Han has one scene in the story, and it's definitely not a good look for him. Elegos Akla is going to try to make peace with the Yuzhan Vong himself by turning himself in and trying to open up negotiations with Shidao Sai. Oh, it's worth noting, Shidao Shai. It's worth noting that I'm not keeping all the characters on these slides. I'm only giving visuals of the new ones. Right. There's way too many to keep track of.
There's 19 books. It would be too small if you kept them all.
As a reminder, Elegos Akla is the Kamasi senator who played a major role in the previous book by defending Leia and helping her in her mission. I don't know, is it Kamasi or Kaamasi? I'm going to say Kamasi, and if I'm butchering it, I'm sorry. They're a species with psychic abilities. They can transfer memories between each other. So they have a deep history and heritage that way. They are known
you're in an argument with like your significant other, and that never happened, and you just throw the memory. Oh, sorry, you're right.
They're known pacifists, and their homeworld was destroyed early on in the Empire. Everyone kind of figured that Palpatine was behind it, but proof didn't come out until 19 years later after the Battle of Yavin. The Hand of Thrawn duology covers these events. It's a really interesting story. So it's worth pointing out that Shidao Shai is a very interesting villain at this point. He exemplifies the complexity of the Yuzhan Vong, at least their leaders. The grunts are just kind of mindless, like they just want to pillage and kill and stuff. But the leaders are more complex. They're full of pride and cruelty, yet they still seem noble in a way, at least to themselves. Like they have this really noble mission. The Yuzhan Vong as a whole are shown to glorify pain, but Shidao Shai specifically is the only character who thinks meditation while in the embrace of pain is a valuable pastime. He's kind of a fanatic. At this point in the story, at this point in the story, it's really hard to place loyalty among the Yuzhan Vong. Shidao Shai is very honorable and even almost likable in some scenes. Others, like Dane Leon, his second in command, is just basically a backstabber, only looking out for himself. And it's hard to say which is more common among the Yuzhan Vong because as the decent true believers tend to lose out among the amoral ones, which is kind of how it goes. But it's a very fascinating dynamic between the leaders and the key players, and like sometimes you wonder how they stay as society, and then sometimes you're like, oh, I see. It's very interesting. Shortly after everyone starts heading out to their missions, Anakin shows Luke some disturbing information that he'd found while snooping where he wasn't wanted. Basically, Anakin installed some spyware on the Jedi's computers to figure out what info they looked up after getting their assignments. The whole reason was this, so that he could figure out what needs to be included in future like mission packets, because that was his job at the time, which is a weird way to go about it. But basically, one of the Jedi, a Twi'lek named Deshara Kor, also on here, looks up a ton of stuff on Imperial superweapons and goes looking to see if maybe there's another one lying around that could be used against the Yuuzhan Vong. She was infatuated with the late Miko Reglia and is lashing out in rage because of his death. Spoilers, there isn't a super weapon, and Luke, Mara, and Anakin ended up tracking her down and bringing her back to the light side of the Force. But like for a second, you're like, someone needs to go get her before something bad happens. It's worth noting that throughout the book, we bear witness to conversations between Shai and Elagos after Elagos is captured and brought to him. I personally love these conversations, as it truly seemed like two honorable intellectuals learning about one another's philosophies and testing each other's beliefs with their own. It was like really like intellectual sparring in some ways. It's very interesting. They're not a huge part of the book, but each time I genuinely believe that, like, if anyone could turn Shidao Shai to the good side, it would have been Elagos. Like, it's just very thoughtful conversations. Switching back to Corran. Corran and his crew stealth insert onto Garki. Their plan was to make it look like they burn up in the atmosphere and basically crash. And Jaina, who is running cover for the operation with Rogue Squadron, literally thinks they're dead at first because they didn't tell anybody because of secrecy. So she's like, I literally just lost my brother and Corran. They're dead. They're gone. And no one could tell her because she wasn't in on the secret. So she's mad. She's really mad. But then the cool part is, like, because she wasn't treated with any special like privileges because she was a Jedi, because she was put on the same playing field as the rest of her squadron, it actually helps her bond with the rest of her new squadron at the time, which is
makes sense.
It's a cool moment. On Garki, they find out the Yuuzhan Vong are amassing an army of slave soldiers and are experimenting with their control systems to see how much they can modify the species of the galaxy. In an attempt to develop countermeasures for this, Corran, with the help of some local resistance forces, steals 2 of the soldiers. They end up being pursued, and after a really good fight, the Jedi lead the attackers into an abandoned botanical garden. Things are looking pretty grim for them as they are outnumbered, and Ganner is down. Ganner gets, you remember Pretty Boy? Yeah, he gets a nice big gash on his face, right down the moneymaker, and he's like out for the count.
You get good looking, and then you get a cool scar. Like, come on, like.
Well, it's a.
Or is it like an ugly scar? I
mean, it's not an ugly scar, but I mean, it's like his whole, like down. It's like a nice big line down his whole face.
Nice.
Yeah. So he's down. Suddenly, the Yuuzhan Vong all start dying. Come to find out, their Von Dune crab armor has a massive allergic reaction to the pollen of Bafor trees, which are pictured in this picture in the slide.
Have you seen War of the Worlds with Tom Cruise?
Yeah.
The ending to that is so stupid.
Honestly, I don't remember what it was.
The bacteria in the water kills all the aliens.
I remember that being a good movie, though.
It was a very good. It's an underrated movie.
Yeah.
That, like, the ferry scene is amazing, but like the aliens just drink the water on planet Earth and they all die.
It's kind of like Signs.
That
I've never seen.
Well, so you never seen Signs?
You never seen Signs?
That's one of the best, like, M. Night Shyamalan movies, dude. It's so good. You gotta watch it.
I don't have any faith with him after.
Okay, I'm vouching that there's some good movies that he's made, and Signs is one of them.
All right.
Yeah, Sixth Sense, Signs.
It's kind of stupid though. How
Signs?
Like the practicality of that is kind of dumb. Like they went to like the most water planet of all time.
Well, they didn't know there was bacteria in the water. Which was whatever. We were talking about two different things.
I don't
Go
want to
ahead.
spoil it.
So anyways, the pollen causes an allergic reaction to their armor, and it like kills them inside their armor. So Corrin, unfortunately, has the entire garden burned down to hide this information because he's like, because see, here's the thing: the trees are native to the planet Ithor. You might have heard of a race called Ithorians.
I figured that's what that guy was, but his head looks
good old hammerheads, as they call them.
Doesn't look like a hammerhead. Is his head just turned away?
His head's just kind of turned. It's
definitely a hammerhead.
Yeah. So
those trees that look like lamps.
Yes. So the thing about this is like Corrin's like, okay, they're native to Ithor. Ithor hasn't been attacked yet, and Ithor is like, they're kind of like one of those planets, like one of the key planets in the Republic. They're a really prominent species. They're a species of pacifists, huge art and spiritual culture there. And he's like, look, if word gets out that this has the effect that it does, they're going to go straight to Ithor and
blow it up.
Yeah, they're going to take it down. So we while we have an advantage, we got to keep it secret. So he's like, we have to burn the whole thing down. Well, the Yuuzhan Vong still figure it out. It was a good shot, but they still figured it out. During the fight, Gander's quote-unquote handsome face is scarred, and it acts as a turning point for his character. So, like, they go to, like, apply medical attention to him, and he's like, no, like, don't. He's like, I want you to go ahead and close up the scar right now, like, close up the wound right now. And
he wants to bear the scar.
Yeah.
Like a handsome person.
Jason? Jason? Yeah, Jason is like, but it's going to scar. And he's like, no, I needed this because, like, basically he was so arrogant that he thought he was impervious to being injured and like he was above all that. And like he even mentions like he feels like he's more powerful than Luke at some points. And like this was a very big humbling experience for him. And he sheds off his whole arrogance right then and there. But then at this point, everyone regroups at Ithor, home of the Barfer trees. Leia's trip to the Empire bore fruit, and Pelion has come with aid. It's also the first appearance of Jagged Fell, also on the thing, who is the leader of a Chiss Expansionary Defense Force squadron. And the reason why we have these clawcraft, as they're called, is because that's what the Chiss use. So in the expanded universe, there was an exchange between the Chiss and Palpatine really early on before he ever became Emperor, and they traded some technology, and that's kind of where the clawcraft came from. But they're like super maneuverable. They have hyperdrives. They have shields. They're basically the TIE defenders.
Do they have shields?
They're basically TIE defenders, like superior TIE defenders.
They're called
clawcraft because
it looks like a claw.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, these things are super cool. I like them a lot. But yeah, if you're wondering about why there's a human leading a Chiss force, that is because his father, Baron Fell, was an Imperial pilot who basically...
Did he fall?
Got him.
He defected and went to work with the Chiss and fell in love with the Chiss culture. And
he fell in love.
Okay. So anyways, he's the only human among the Chiss that has a place of influence and like a position of power in the Chiss. And his son was born and was brought up with the Chiss, and they respect him as like a military.
As a fellow Chiss.
Oh my gosh. Anyways, he's a really good pilot. He's better than Jaina. That's what I'm trying to say. And he's also around her age. He's like 1 or 2 years older than her. He's really young, but anyways.
You miss us, Andrew.
Yes. The Chiss also decide to aid in the battle over Ithor. Jag is generally a better pilot, and she finds him entirely too grim for the time being. Hint, hint. However, because of the moments they share together, you can almost feel some sort of begrudgingly budding relationship in the works. Senators from the Republic, including Chief of State Borsk Thalia, come to oversee the battle that is looming on the horizon, along with Leia. and the New Republic, the Imperial Remnant, Chiss, the Jedi, they all get together and plan a defense. Borsk Thalia is over here right now. One thing, there's this big like flying saucer looking thing. One thing to note about this planet, I guess I go into it here. While this is all happening, there's a cool ceremony between the High Priest of Ithor and the Jedi. You see that no one is really allowed to step foot on Ithor because of their sacred view of the planet as the mother jungle. And so they have floating cities, and that's what one of these is. They can go into orbit, but generally they don't do that. They just kind of hover in atmosphere over the jungle.
I always be like, the Thorians are flat earthers. That's kind of what it looked like when I was like first looking at it.
However, there are those who travel to the jungle on pilgrimage, and to do so, they must shed themselves and become one with the larger jungle. Since it's possible the Jedi might need to fight in the jungle when the invasion takes place, they're taken through the ceremony of shedding themselves, mainly spiritually denouncing the things that prevent them from being one with others. The things that hold them back. Luke renounces the responsibility of leading the Jedi Order solely on his own and carrying that weight solely on his own without acknowledging the others. Anakin gives up self-assuredness. Corran gives up fear. Ganner gives up pride. And Dashara Kor gives up hatred. Jason, from whose perspective the moment is told from, gives up the need to know who will become later, which is something he had been struggling with, along with the overall direction of the Jedi too. It's a small moment, but it's powerful in the development of the Jedi we've gotten to know thus far.
I was going to say that's probably really good for him because he was like questioning everything.
It makes him a little bit less annoying. So anyways, Shidal Shai learns that Corran was behind Bimmel and Garki, and learns through both an underling and Elegos that Elegos is his friend. So, out of vengeance, Shai sends him a gift, and that is Elegos's bones, ceremoniously preserved and decorated with jewels. So they killed the senator and basically gild him in gold and jewels. His bones pose him, and they send it to the Republic as a gift.
Nice. I would return that gift.
Yeah, it's a rough moment because Leia was really close to Elegos, and then so was Corran. So Corran is like he's kind of on the vengeance path a little bit, not totally, but we learned he apparently strangled him personally. By the way, anyways,
all right,
fun.
So. Then the Battle of Ithor begins, and many of the warriors on both sides are killed, including Dashara Kor, who is mortally wounded by saving Anakin from the Yuuzhan Vong warriors. Annie Capstan,
Anakin just keeps getting in the wrong place at the wrong time. What?
I want to say something so badly. Just remember what you said.
Okay.
Just hold that in your brain. Okay.
So he's gonna get in the way in a worse way. Just keep it up.
Anyways,
Chewie already died because of this dude. This other guy just died.
Huh?
Like, Anakin, stay home, bro.
Stay home. So Annie Capstan, a close personal friend and fellow fighter pilot of Jaina's, is also killed, and this is Jaina's first real loss. It really teaches her the fragility of war and almost gives her a new grim edge to her outlook moving forward. It's kind of tough on her. During the battle, Corran, who realizes that Shai has a personal vendetta against him, meets up with Shidal Shai via a Villip choir. Okay, so Villips are, think of like a basketball that inverts, and it's like a fleshy video call. That's how they communicate. They don't use holograms. And so a Villip choir is like a wall of these things that form a big image together, and it's really weird. I never liked this, but anyways, they connect. Him and Shai connect, and they make a deal. For the next week, the New Republic and the Yuuzhan Vong will temporarily call off the war, and then Corran and Shai will duel on Ithor under a full moon. If Corran wins, they leave Ithor for good, and if Shai wins, they get the planet and his ancestors' bones back. Everyone calls Corran out for this being a horrible idea, but eventually agrees that it's worth it. The truth is settled immediately, and Anakin listens to Dashara Kor Deshara Core in a medical unit that it was not his fault that neither she nor Chewbacca had died. It's a big moment for him as he had been carrying the guilt of Chewie's death up until that point. Deshara Core then passes away into the Force. This is a nice healing moment for Anakin. But the duel arrives. This is an artist depiction on the slide, though Corran actually has he doesn't wear robes like that. He wears green robes, and he has a silver lightsaber, which is kind of cool. But anyways, this is like an artist interpretation of it. The duel arrives, and Corran barely wins the fight. This is cool. He uses the trick he's called out for in the first chapter while training with Mara, where he turns off his lightsaber to get the opponent to overextend and get into his guard. So basically that one Visions moment where he like turns off his lightsaber and hits him again in Visions.
Mm-hmm. I vaguely remember which episode.
The one with the old guy with the 2 red lightsaber katanas.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And he turns it off, and then he hits him again, turns it back on. That's what Corran does, which I thought was cool.
Which I think is a move that I feel like more Jedi should do, but I feel like
freaking Quamir did it.
What's this like? Oh, yeah. What is it called in boxing or whatever?
The old ghosty ghost?
No, technical it's like term. A bait and switch, but there's a technical term.
Beyblade?
It's like they like act like they're like concussed, so then the boxer like moves in to like finish off the other dude, and then they're faking it. Rope and dope, that's what it's called. Because they like lean on the rope.
Shake and bake?
Yeah. Like they lean on the rope, acting like and covering up like they're like about to get knocked out. And then boom, because they're so close. And they knock out the other guy. It's called a rope and dope.
Fun.
Yeah. Sick. Fun so that's what he does. And he kills him. So he and Luke tell Dane Leon, who was there as Shy's second. So that was a cool thing. This duel, you had to bring seconds, kind of like John Wick, you know? Anyways, so they're like, hey, you got to honor this. Like, we made a deal. You got to honor it. And it looks like they're going to do it. But then we learned that Leon has prepared a bioweapon that Shy forbade him from using And apparently this little weasel has also been working for War Master Svong La, who's going to be a major character later, who wanted Shy's ruin. So there's some infighting, and he's like, be my agent and help me take him down, and you'll be rewarded. So then, with Shy dead, Leon unleashes the weapon on Ithor. It's a bacterial attack that literally gray goos the planet, killing everything organic. Like, it melts everything organic.
Fun.
It also pumps hydrogen and oxygen content into the air way past normal levels. And I'm not gonna lie, like it's hard to read. Like, it talks about animals like melting and stuff, and I was like, oh, this is really bad. Like, this is hard. So anyways, Ithor, this beautiful like bastion of peace and you know, art and nature, all of a sudden is just being torn from the galaxy, is melting before everyone's eyes. So this leader, this little weasel guy, he attempts to withdraw after killing Ithor, but gets jumped by an Imperial interdictor, prevents his escape. Basically they take him down, and because of the high oxygen count in the air in Ithor, his ship explodes. It combusts in the atmosphere and takes some other scout ships from the Yuuzhan Vong down with it.
Exciting.
While the New Republic technically won the battle, the loss of Ithor means it doesn't feel very victorious. While the Yuuzhan Vong had previously destroyed Serpendal, Ithor was an important planet for the New Republic, and everything became very real and very fragile for everyone. In the wake of the battle, the Jedi are blamed by the New Republic Senate for Ithor's destruction, especially Corran Horn, who is deemed the, quote, killer of Ithor because of his acts in destroying the planet. Due to the public backlash, Corran exiles himself to his home planet of Corellia. Which really made me angry because, like, it wasn't his fault, technically. But I get it. You have to blame someone. So that's Dark Tide 2 Ruin.
Cool. It's cool seeing Ithorian cultures and stuff. Like, we never seen that before, so.
Yeah.
It's cool.
There's a lot of cool stuff, man. There's a lot of cool stuff in these books. Okay. Any questions?
Nope.
All right. Let's move on. Okay.
What is that guy?
Oh, you're gonna find out. So we're gonna start the Agents of Chaos duology here.
This is a 2-parter too.
Yes. Okay, I was gonna say something, but I have a point for it later, so I'll talk about it later. All right. Setting the stage for this book, the war with the New Republic continues to get worse as the Yuuzhan Vong continue to advance towards Coruscant. If you notice on this map that the planets that are circled, Coruscant being one of them, towards the lowest left corner there, you can't see the full name, but it's there. If you notice, they've gained a lot of ground. So they started way back at Belkadan.
Right.
And now they're advancing very quickly through this invasion corridor. So it's just worth noting. Their latest capture is the information-rich planet of Abora Sky, Abroa Sky. To make matters worse, some citizens of the galaxy are actually starting to side with the Yuuzhan Vong, becoming a group known as the Peace Brigade.
Interesting.
They basically sell refugees to the Yuuzhan Vong to save their own skin, and also play small roles in the invasions by helping prepare worlds in advance. They're scum. They're turncoats. This story starts 6 months after Vector Prime at Chewbacca's funeral. This section is mainly told through C-3PO's point of view, and 3PO gets a few more sections during the book where he muses on the concept of morality, which I thought was really interesting. Because we don't
get that side of it.
You don't get a lot of C-3PO's point of view anyways, but honestly, it was really fun to read. This is something that he has previously never really thought of beyond his whole we're doomed thing. Until now, of course, when faced with an enemy that goes out of their way to destroy droids. Because again, maybe this goes without saying, maybe not, but the Yuuzhan Vong despise technology. Right. Absolutely despise it. To the point where if they have to touch technology in terms of like, you know, clearing out a scene of a battle or something, they have to purify themselves. Like it's that bad. And so they hate droids. Droids are like the ultimate abominations. The only humans at the funeral are Han, Leia, Luke, Anakin, Jason, and Jaina. So basically the Skywalkers and the Solos, the rest are Wookiees. Han's in a horrible mood, fights with Luke and then Leia separately, and then finally takes off on his own to get back to Coruscant early. Meanwhile, Nam Anor, and this spell checked, and it says Norm. It's spell checked on my notes. My notes. Yeah, okay. Norm Anor. That's just funny. Nam Anor is back, along with a priest named Harar, who is here. They hatch a plan to assassinate the Jedi. They use Elend, another priestess, who in the picture, the only pictures I can find of her are in her like masker disguise. There are no confirmed pictures of her as an actual Yuuzhan Vong, so just know that she's actually on the cover. Yeah, she's actually on the cover too. This picture is from the actual cover of the book. But anyways, so they use her and her familiar Vergir, who is also here. You might remember Vergir from our Yuuzhan Vong episode. Maybe not. Anyways.
Maybe tell some details about her. And then
we'll get there. Maybe remember. Who pretend to defect. The two of them pretend to defect to the New Republic. So we have a priestess and her familiar. She's carrying a bioweapon that she can use at will, a spore that basically kills everything in its radius. Fun. So the idea is to get them defect, get them in front of the Jedi, and kill as many Jedi as possible, basically.
And this whole time, what's her name is like still sick and dying.
Yes.
Jeez.
Because nobody can solve it. So, yeah, sad day. They sacrifice several military units to make the defection believable, including deliberately losing a fight at Ord Mantell to ensure that it looks like she has some actionable intel that they're trying to get back from her. If that makes sense. She knows about another biological attack that was made against the Jedi, but will only share that info with them. Quote, or hint, hint, she's talking about Mara's illness.
I mean, at this point, we know that they have something to do with it, considering they have all these bioweapons.
Well, that and Nam Anor straight up says that he did it in the first book.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah. Our story continues with when Han meets an old friend, Roa, who's on here, who asks for his help in settling an old score. His wife, Lywell, was killed by the Yuzon Vong, another old friend from their smuggling days, Rek Desh, who is now working with the Peace Brigade. Han, wanting more than a little vengeance himself, decides to go with Roa and settle things with Rek. To do this, Han walks out on Leia and refuses to say where he's going.
Han.
Anakin gives him a multi-tool that Chewbacca had previously made for Anakin, and Han reluctantly takes it. It's worth noting here that there are many who don't like this part of the story, mainly because of Han. He's been depressed and basically isolated from his family for the last 6 or so months, while everyone else has also been mourning Chewie's death, including the Solo children who were partly raised by him. Han's been acting like he's the only one who really lost someone. He's not truly made up with Anakin, which has been an obvious strain on their relationship. The scene where he tells Leia bye is honestly really hard to read, and you can tell that on top of the war, Leia has been trying to hold the family together. It's just, it's tough. It's so tough because you're like, no, like it's Han and Leia. Like, well, I mean, in canon,
I was going to say in canon, it sounds like
it's another freaking disappointment. Anyways, it's not.
I've never expected them to have a good relationship.
I guess that's the one thing that they got right.
But in the EU, they have such a good relationship up until this point. Like, they have a really good relationship up until this point. And so, like, in all the books I've read, they're like a power couple now. And they keep their personalities, mind you. Like, they don't change his characters, but they're like really bonded together. And all of a sudden, Han's being just a disappointment to everything Star Wars. And like, anyways. But I will say it is really refreshing to see a character grieve this way in like a very human way.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not right. I don't promote grieving and shunning everyone, but like at the same time, it really makes it like relatable in some ways. But anyways, Roa and Han then set out to on Roa's ship for Ord Mantell to follow a lead Roa has on the Peace Brigade. Unbeknownst to Han, Leia also goes to Ord Mantell to negotiate regarding the massive amounts of refugees that are flooding into their space. This will become a pretty reoccurring thing. Massive influxes of refugees from the invasion corridor begin straining the resources of the planets they flee to, and the stress is extremely high all around. Plenty of places will take a few hundred more people, but no one is truly interested in the millions of refugees currently on the move. I mean, we're talking whole planets worth of people. It's a crisis.
Right.
So I just thought it's a very, like, some stories will really hyper focus on certain aspects of like a war or conflicts.
Mm-hmm.
And you wonder about the others, but it's not the focus. This story is so holistic in the way like it addresses this invasion, and I really enjoyed that. Okay. Han and Roa don't go to the surface of the planet, but to a large space station in orbit called the Jubilee Wheel. It's worth noting that the weapons are only allowed here after the power pack has been drained, so no one's really armed. The two are there to meet up with a guy named Phasgo, who used to run with Rek. Along the way, they run into a Trandoshan that Han figures out is Bosk. Bosk recognizes Han, insults Chewbacca, and Han throws the first punch. They all end up in the lockup because of the fight, and Han gets bailed out by a guy who, quote, runs the station. As it turns out, Boss B, the boss, who Phasgo suggested they meet up with, is Big Bungie. Bungie is a villain from the Adventures of Han Solo books. Apparently, that's all under the water under the bridge at this point. They're interrupted by a Yuzon Vong attack on the system. The trio of Han, Roa, and Phasgo race back to the docking bays, but are interrupted by the Vong ship growing a space worm and biting the station. And that is exactly what you see in this picture over here on the right.
Jeez. Space worm.
Yep. It starts sucking people out of the station like a big vacuum because they need slaves.
Right.
Roa and Phasgo are sucked up, but Han manages to close an emergency bulkhead with the help of a Wren named Droma. Wrens are an alien species who are essentially space gypsies.
That's the monkey-looking dude.
I mean, yeah, if you want to say it that way.
I mean, he kind of looks like the monkey from Lion King.
So Droma's down there on the bottom, but a Wren is this person in the trench coat. But they're very like they're written like literally as like nomadic. They're gypsies, like nomadic. They have a rich musical culture. They're very communal. Like they have rich like food culture and stuff like it's they're Star Wars gypsies essentially. Let me see. So Droma leads Han to the docking bay, and Han has picked up a bunch of people, panicking people at this point, all pile aboard this super small shuttle and escape the station. That is until Han feels the need to buzz the warship in his unarmed shuttle and only realizes that he's not in the Falcon and not alone when Droma calls him out on it because he's being irresponsible. Han was planning on somehow rescuing Roa. It doesn't make any sense, but realizes that he's exactly in Anakin's situation from Serpentine. He can't save Roa, and trying will only imperil all the people he's just rescued.
So this is reality of understanding.
Yeah. Yuuzhan Vong retreat, and Han makes it down to the planet where he learns from Bungie that the Peace Brigade have something planned for Bilbringi. So that's where Han goes. It's also sort of circled on there. Along the way, he runs into Leia and argues some more before convincing 3PO to fake Leia's voice to help him get passage off-world. 3PO gets Han aboard the ill-named Queen of the Empire, an old cruise ship that's now ferrying refugees. Back to the plane with Ilyn and Vergere. It's actually working perfectly. They've defected. The New Republic is actually bringing her back to Coruscant, where the Jedi have agreed to meet with her. However, one of the last legs of the trip involves traveling to Bilbringi on an old cruise ship under disguise. You'll never guess which old cruise ship that is.
The Falcon?
No, the Queen of the Empire, the one Han's on.
Oh.
But they don't know that because
she's Falcon with, like, around, or is that a thing?
He didn't take it. The Falcon's back on Coruscant.
Oh, okay.
He didn't take the Falcon. He took Roa's ship. So he's without the Falcon, and their Republic intelligence is moving her under disguise to get her back to Coruscant. So this is where the plots converge. The New Republic has a traitor high in the ranks who sells out Ilyn to the Peace Brigade. Rek doesn't know that Ilyn is a plant and tries to recapture her as a traitor to show his loyalty to his new bosses. So the Yuuzhan Vong are trying to get her in under disguise to kill the Jedi. He's like, sick. This is a great opportunity to make good with my new bosses and maybe save my own skin. And then like tries to get her back. And they're like, stop. Like, this is the one time we don't need you to do anything. So basically he and his Peace Brigade guys break into the ship, cue a shootout that kills most of the New Republic intelligence agents. And the last living one flees with Ilyn and Vergere and runs into Han, who's on the same ship. Han happened to work with him during the Corellian trilogy books. So he assumes that Han is there as the backup they requested and just dumps the two of them on Han. And like in the book, Han's so confused. The guy's like, "Oh, good, you're here. I can't believe they sent you of all people, like General Han Solo, like all this stuff." And Han's like, "Dude, what? Like, what are you talking about?" And then he's just like, "Okay, keep these two. I'm gonna go off and do blah, blah, blah." And he runs off, and Han's like, "What?"
Talk about timing.
Yeah. It's a very Han Solo moment. So Han and Droma, who had been traveling together and split up briefly, are now back together, making it a group of 4. They reunite just in time for Rek and his Peace Brigade goons to show up with an interdictor and seize the ship. Rek captures Ilyn and Vergere and aims to throw down Han down a turbo lift shaft. They've all been turned off in the emergency, so the lifts are just long death traps, basically, at this point. Han willingly walks off the ledge rather than make Rek shoot him and grabs Droma's tail without Rek knowing. So Rek thinks he's dead. doesn't know who Droma is, and thus just doesn't bother to shoot him. So Hans survived once again. Rek escapes on a shuttle headed back towards the Yuzan Vong ship, and Han gives chase in the Falcon, which he got back from Leia and Luke in the midst of everything. Han and Droma, who's now co-piloting the Falcon for this mission, catch up with the shuttle to find everyone dead, everyone except for Ellen and Vergier. Ellen says she recognizes the weapon, but mistakenly says that the Yuzan Vong are immune, blowing her cover and everything. There was a Yuzan Vong agent with the Peace Brigade earlier, and Han pretty much spotted the lanky human undercover in one of their biological maskers. Han confronts her about this and figures the Vong ship isn't trying very hard to catch them. So he's like putting everything together. He's like, wait, they're not trying very hard to get you. I think you're a plant. So he plans to toss her out in an escape pod and give her back to them. Elin attempts to kill Han with the same bioweapon, but a lucky shot knocks him off balance. A voice in the back of Han's head tells him the attack is airborne, and Han quickly pulls out the multi-tool Anakin gave him, and he uses its emergency oxygen supply. Elin doesn't have that and dies of her own attack, and when she can't hold her breath any longer, she's gone. The attack, while deadly, is short-lived. All that's left is Vergier. Vergier gives Han a vial of her tears, tells him they're a miracle cure, and escapes via the escape pod back to the Yuzan Vong, supposedly. Said miracle cure miraculously helps Mara. They legit heal her. Han later wonders about the voice in his head and says he won't tell Luke because he doesn't want to hear about it's the Force thing. He legit thinks it might have been Chewie.
Oh, dang.
But here's the thing. He heard a voice.
What was it, in basic or was it in Shuriwook?
You never know. He got a literal impression that the attack was airborne and that he needed to hold his breath. So, I mean, I don't know. We'll never know. But he felt something tangible and thinks it's Chewie.
Cool.
The story ends with Han kind of making up with Leia, but he still takes off without telling her where he's going. Droma has saved his life more than once, and Han is going to repay the favor by helping him chase down the rest of his clan, who were separated way back on the Jubilee Wheel. And that's the end of the first of the two books.
Exciting.
Oh, yeah.
Sweet.
Ready to take it home?
Yep. Final stretch.
All right. Here we go. If you can't tell, we have shifted very close to the core now.
I see a full circle, so that means they're like right there.
Yeah, the deep core is right there. Okay, so our story begins a few months removed from the end of the last book. We join Leia on the planet Gendine, another world that is under attack by the Yuzan Vong. Long story short, she's on the last shuttle off the ground in the middle of a terrible war zone, with as many people as she can manage. She's been trying to move refugees to somewhere safe, but this has been complicated by the fact that each time they run to a new world in the invasion corridor, the Yuzan Vong seemingly just follow them pretty shortly after. It's happening very fast. They legit can't catch a break, and the refugees are compounding by the millions as each world falls. During the escape, the Jedi Worth Skitter, who's on the presentation, who is on the ground with her, stays behind intentionally to try and infiltrate the Yuzan Vong slave system and like take it down from the inside out, which I think is so stupid. But he's like, I can do it. And then he's like, dude, get on the freaking shuttle. And he's like, no. And then we'll see how that.
Yeah.
We can cut some time off here. He dies.
Yeah.
He dies later. He dies. Kip goes to try to get him back, and he dies in the process. And it's kind of a noble thing, but he dies. He doesn't get. So here's an important note: Yuzan Vong loves sacrifice. They think the more beings they sacrifice to their gods, the more favor they're going to get in battle. So at many points, you see them literally packing vessels full of people and like just sending them into suns. We're talking mass level. Yes. Mass levels of sacrifice, bordering genocide in some places. So instead of becoming sacrificed, where Skitter is put on a special project with, he ends up with Roa, who does end up getting rescued later in the book. Him and Phasgo, they end up getting rescued, but they get put on this special project of training a Yamask and like kind of helping it grow from its infancy stage. He tries to, being a Jedi, being telepathic, he's like, I can trick it into working for us and yada, yada, yada. And like, it ousts him as a Jedi, and he ends up getting tortured to the point where he just kind of dies. So it's like a C-level plot, but it's good, but it's there. Anyways. Meanwhile, Borga the Hutt, the current leader of the Hutts and Hutt space. Oh yeah. Where if you can't tell, in the bottom right hand corner, now Hutta is circled. The whole name isn't there, but that's Hutt space.
Cool.
So we're on Now Hutta now. We're now Hutta. Anyway. So Borga the Hutt meets with the Yuuzhan Vong commander Malik Kar and asks what places her business enterprises should avoid. Even though it's extremely obvious to Kar what she's fishing for, he tells her 3 systems to avoid on a business level, aka don't ship spice, don't do drugs there. So immediately, being the experienced being that she sells the information to the New Republic. Talon Card, who is from the Thrawn books, and some other Jedi buy the information and take it to the New Republic, and also notice via their intelligence networks that Hutt smuggling has stopped in those same systems. So they've got the intelligence and they're like, is this legit? And then they notice maybe it's actually legit. Well, then one of those systems actually gets hit and they're like, okay, this is legit intelligence. So the New Republic puts together a plan to trick the Yuuzhan Vong into attacking Corellia by leaving the system undefended. Now, if you notice, Corellia is pretty close to the core.
Yeah.
And so they're basically dangling Corellia in front of them as a trap. As a trap. So the reason they pick Corellia is Center Point Station, which is the big how would you describe the shape of it?
It looks like that thing where it's like you do the exercise with the wheel on the ground and you go back and forth like while you're
Yep. That's a good way to. Yeah, it's like a
ball with 2 things sticking out the side.
Yeah. That's what it is. Anyways, it's a space station. And we'll talk about that in a second. We'll go into that later. But while this is happening, Leia goes to Hapes, which is there. It's like, if you can see my mouse, can you see it?
Yep.
It's like over here. I couldn't really put everything on the map, but she goes to Hapes, which is the capital of the Hapes Consortium, to ask for their help in the war effort. This is a spicy move because Leia almost married the Hapan Crown Prince Isolder during the courtship of Princess Leia book. She almost didn't marry Han. So anyway, she goes to that guy. She's like, hey, you wanna help us out? Wink, bats her eyes, maybe. I don't know. She actually handles it really well. But anyways, they go way back. We also touch base with Worth Skitter. Again, this is his whole thing. He gets trapped. So the Hutts and the Yuuzhan Vong have entered an agreement, and there's a Hutt on the ship that Worth is at, and he like tries to use that to his advantage. Basically, it doesn't work. But the Hutt does leak information to Kip that he's there, which prompts the rescue that eventually sees him die and frees Roa and Phasgo. Minor thing, but it's there. During all this, Han and Droma are traveling with one another, trying to get Droma's clan back together. Along the way, they learn that the Yuuzhan Vong are paying a group of rogues to pick up refugees and deliberately drop them off on worlds that the Vong plan on targeting. They manage to track Droma's family to Fondor, and at the same time, Kip also chases the ship with Worth on it to Fondor. So there's a theme. Fondor.
Isn't that
shipyards?
Luthen's ship is from Fondor?
Probably.
From Andor?
I will say that is a commonality between EU and Legends. Fondor, the shipyards, it's a thing. It's like a thing in both worlds. Yeah, so it's a very there's a few moments in these books where they like really go out of their way to try to protect the shipyards because they're like, if we can't build more ships, we're screwed. So
right.
But Fondor is
they're
pretty
one of those. Fond of it.
Got him.
Get at the door.
Get out.
There you go.
I'll take it.
But if you notice, Fondor is also on the other side of the core, so they're kind of they've kind of wrapped around. The Republic is not in a good place right now. But you know what is never seemingly attacked?
Wesley Andrews, coffee and
I
tea.
was just about to say that. No, I was going to say that. But actually, Dagobah and Hoth, because of where they are, it's like, man, if you were on Hoth, you were kind of sitting good, other than the cold.
What about Tatooine?
No. Hold on. Let me look at the map because Tatooine is on the map. Naboo's on the map too, which I thought was interesting. No, Tatooine's really... I don't think they ever make it out of Tatooine.
So the Hutts are good there then?
Because the Tatooine is like way down here.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to focus, but... Oh, it is.
Oh, it did.
Wow. Tatooine... Shoot, where is it? Now I'm having to read it backwards. Anyways, Tatooine is like in this general area down here.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And then Hoth and stuff is like way over here, and they never really get down there.
So Hoth was part of the Outer Rim.
Oh, yeah. That's why the Rebels were there. Also, it's really interesting because Hoth and Bespin are on a hyperspace route, like just off the Corellian trade spine. And so like Hoth, like that's why they go to Bespin, because it's so close to Hoth.
Oh.
And then Endor is like kind of so like Hoth and Bespin are right where my finger is. Maybe it'll focus.
No, it's not. Oh,
there it is.
So Hoth and Bespin are like right here.
Mm-hmm.
And then Endor is like over here. So Endor's not far from Hoth and Bespin. So you really realize like all of this is a lot closer than you think it is. Anyways, big plot twist. Yuzhan Vong fooled everyone, and their real target is Fondor. It's not Corellia. The whole thing with the Hutts was just a smokescreen that everyone fell for. The New Republic fleet, all positioned for their quote-unquote ambush, it's a trap, at Corellia are out of position, and the Yuzhan Vong have placed mass shadow mines along the routes to Fondor so they can't get there in time via hyperspace.
Ouch.
So the trap has been trapped. In fact, the only help that can reach Fondor is the Hapen fleet that was being held in reserve because the Hapens agreed to help. They agreed to help Leia, essentially. So they're like, we'll come help. Okay, so before we wrap things up, let's stop back at the center point station point again. The center point station is an ancient bit of stellar engineering tech that no one really knows how to use. At its heart, it's a massive repulsor/tractor beam capable of dragging a planet through hyperspace.
Dragging a planet?
Yes. It's considered to be the reason that Corellia has 5 habitable planets in the system, which is more than usual. And on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, it's also capable of blowing up stars.
Exciting.
But not
it's
planets.
It's like a big tractor beam and a big laser, big gun. During the Corellian trilogy books, Centerpoint was reactivated and it placed a massive interdictor field over the entire system, preventing anyone from coming or going. It would take months to drop out of hyperspace at the edge of the system and then head in at sublight speeds. The villains in that book meant to gain independence for Corellia and blew up 2 stars to show they were serious. Anakin Solo, who was like 5 at the time, stopped them by shutting off one of the planetary repulsors that helped power Centerpoint. The system was built by the Celestials. So we've talked about the Celestials before.
Mm-hmm.
If you remember the Abeloth episode.
Yep.
Because Abeloth is a Celestial. The system was built by the Celestials, a group of Force-sensitive ancient ones, and the machine considered Anakin close enough to them and accepted him as the new controller. As like a 5-year-old. It's been off ever since, and the whole trap relies on having the interdictor field online. because they wanted to trap the Yuuzhan Vong there and basically destroy them while they couldn't leave. So they reach out to Anakin to get the system back online. As it turns out, it only takes Anakin sitting down at the controls to bring the whole thing back online, super weapon and all. Everyone realizes they've been had at Fondor, and that Fondor will fall. So everyone is talking about using center point to hit the Yuuzhan Vong through space and time at Fondor. So like, we can't get there, so let's maybe point the big gun in their direction and take them out. Jason has been there the whole time, and unsurprisingly enough, because he's a crybaby, has been adamantly against Anakin having anything to do with center point. After a moment, Anakin listens to his brother and steps away from the controls. But at this point, Thraken Sal Solo, who's over here, Han's cousin and all-around butthole, and also one of the villains in the center point, or the Corellian trilogy, pushes Anakin aside, basically says, if you're not going to take the shot, I will, and then takes the shot. So when center point is used as a gun, it's basically Starkiller base. That's essentially what they're doing. It's that scale. The Naga's Shadow, the Reddit user wrote, and I quote, when center point is used as a gun, it's more along the line of Starkiller base. 1,000-kilometer wide beam of pure you're effed from anywhere in the galaxy. So I kept that in there because I was like, that's such a good way to do it. So because someone took the shot who couldn't aim it properly, Thraken takes out 3/4 of the Hapen reinforcement fleet.
Of course he does.
A moon, and comes within a few kilometers of taking out Fondor and half of the Yuuzhan Vong fleet. So that's that thing, that the last picture over there. You got the two pictures. That's Anakin doing the thing, and then that's him royally effing everything up. Like,
he's using an Atari controller.
Imagine being like, "Hey, Canada, we need you to come help us in this war, the United States," and then we accidentally nuke 2/3 of their forces.
Sounds about right.
Like, well, it's just like, dude, I read that in the book, and like the way that they describe it is honestly really cool because it's instantaneous. Like, it goes through hyperspace and comes out, and all of a sudden it's this blinding light, and your eyes adjust, and like stuff is just gone. Like, it's erased from existence. So
it's Crybaby's fault for not letting Anakin do it.
Well,
or would Anakin still make the same?
So here's
mistake?
the thing. Apparently, I kind of spoiled this for myself, but Legacy of the Force, which is another series that I'm going to read after this, which is after this series. Apparently, it kind of comes back to haunt Jason, and I'm not sure how, but it's never addressed in these books. But apparently, it does come back. But like, you can argue that, one, maybe they shouldn't have done it in the first place. You could argue that, like, two, if they were, because like it does mention in the book specifically, like there's a moment where Anakin interfaces with the controls, and he's like, I can see it. I know exactly where to point it. I know exactly how to direct it. Like, I'm getting the sense from this thing that I can put it right where the Yuuzhan Vong fleet is. I can do.
He could have ended it right there.
And then Jason's like, don't do it. It's the path to the dark side. Like, he's, I don't know. It's like, he has a point. But like, he's just he's just like a philosophical crybaby for the first little bit of these books, and like he does.
You like him, Andrew?
He turns around, but like next week we're gonna have a talk about him and Anakin, and you'll get some of my frustration. But anyways, so long story short, the Yuuzhan Vong retreat after this, and Thraken Sal Solo is apparently held as a hero, especially when within the Corellian system. The Hapens retreat back to the Hapen cluster to lick their wounds and basically pull out of the war because they feel extremely betrayed. Rightfully
as
so.
They should.
Yeah. The Hutts, who revealed themselves as untrustworthy, get the war with the Yuuzhan Vong that they were trying to avoid. Prince Isolder, in command of the fleet, is disgraced by the Hapens and blames himself after So Leia has a vision while they're together. It's a really minor point, but she has a vision where she's like, she sees mass destruction, and it's really vague, but she's like, I had a force vision, like this is in the future. And she like tries to stop Isolder, but he's like, no, we can do it. And so like he basically blames himself for not listening to her. Sal Solo is seen as a hero. As for Droma and his family, they and the rest of the refugees are shipped off to the planet Duro. It is also revealed at the very end that Senator Vicky Shesh in the New Republic, who we thought was a good guy, she's from Corellia, or Kuat. I think she's Kuati. She's from one of those like industrial, like more prominent. Anyways, it doesn't really matter. She's working for the Yuuzhan Vong. She's the agent on the inside.
Ooh.
Because she's visited at the very end by Na Manor, and they have a talk, and that's who's down there at the bottom. So there you go. That was the end of Agents of Chaos 2 Jedi Eclipse.
Exciting.
So how are we feeling? How are we feeling?
Excited
about about this story so far?
I don't know. I think it's cool that the galaxy is losing. Like they're just like Yuuzhan Vong are just taking over everything, displacing everyone. Like obviously it sucks.
Yeah.
But like it's cool that it's like a massive galaxy wide invasion.
Yeah.
Like it's not like it's the Clone Wars where it's like this planet is doing its own thing and this planet's doing its own thing. Like it's an onslaught that
and they're Republic, like working through the planets and stuff. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting. There's a lot of characters that try and keep track of.
Yeah.
So
I will say that it does get a little bit easier because now that we've kind of opened the floodgates of like all the new characters, you're going to see a lot of the names begin to repeat more rather than more characters be introduced. If my memory serves me correctly, I mean there are some more, but it's really like it's going to focus on the Solo kids, Luke, Mara, Han, Leia. You know, Droma will be around for a little bit, but you know, so. Right. But yeah, if you're enjoying the New Republic losing, then you're gonna love the next few books because it just doesn't stop.
Right.
The stakes get even higher. So, Drew, how are you feeling?
I like it.
Still sad about Chewie?
I don't want to talk about that.
Okay, moving.
And I will say with complete confidence, he does not. This isn't. I'm not tricking you. I'm not.
No, we get it.
It's not.
I remember him being killed when you did the Yuuzhan Vong thing.
Yeah, like
back in the day.
He is big gone. He never comes back. So yeah, we did 5 books in like 3 hours.
Yep.
When it took me 4 hours to do one the last time, so I think it's a pretty big improvement.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And it's also
starting to come around, Andrew.
Yeah. I'm looking at these 5 books and I'm like, it took me like 2.5 months to read these, and I just told the summary of them in 3 hours, which is wild to me. So anyways, there you go.
Cool. Well, thank you for that. But we got everyone's favorite time of every episode. Hey. So let's just transition over to voicemail time.
Give it to me. Come on.
It's voicemail time.
Last week when we had Isabella on, she thought it was the funniest transition.
No matter how good the music gets, no matter how much I contribute to this podcast, that will probably be my crowning achievement.
So when we did our top 5 Empire Radio things for our 300th episode, like that would have been one of yours, if not your number 1 thing in Empire Radio history.
Probably been number 2.
Number 2? What was number 1?
I think just the initial, just starting with the two of you in the room.
With the bowl,
like having
bowl of candy.
Yeah, like Halloween that, candy. Like the whole, like the New Hope thing. But it's not just those specific moments. It's like the whole, like
all of it. It's
a really special time. Yeah. Like getting the dynamic down, being in the room together, eating the candy for like months. It felt like
it was only like 6 weeks before the world shut down. So like,
was it really only that long?
Yeah, it was,
because we were doing 2 a week at one point too.
There was a few times we were doing 2 a week, but
yeah, it felt longer than that. But anyways,
Yep.
Good times.
All right. Well, we have a bunch. We've been doing a lot with voicemails recently, Andrew. Like before, we got down to like 1 or 2, maybe 3, but now last few weeks we've been doing a lot. So tonight we have 6 voicemails.
Wow.
The first 4 are actually from our newest, biggest fan, Yaretsi. She's been super awesome. She was in the chat tonight. Maybe she's still there. But let's take a listen to her first voicemail.
Hey Empire Radio, I'm back with another voicemail, and hey Andrew. This is the first time I'm sending a voicemail with you on the podcast. I love your EU with Andrews, and you guys are definitely my favorite podcast. Yeah, keep up the good work, guys. Y'all are amazing, and since you guys share so much of your life with us, like with the Discord family and our community, I was thinking, y'all should know a fun fact about me. I was actually born in Germany. No, I'm not German, but I was just born there. Anyway, that's a fun fact about me. What's a fun fact about you? Thanks for making this podcast. Y'all are amazing. Bye.
I love the use of y'all. It makes my
She's
heart
from
happy.
Texas, so.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. I love it. We love
cool.
this
Born in Germany. That's pretty cool.
Do you have dual citizenship? That's my
Does that happen in Germany? If
I
you're
think
born
it
there?
happened most places.
No, that's not. That's not true.
Not everywhere.
United States, I think, is one of the few countries that actually has that.
Oh no! Dang. Well, that was
GG.
Cool. Thank you for the kind words too.
Yeah,
I really appreciate it.
So
She's been
fun fact.
the podcast.
Yes. So fun fact. Anything about you guys that you want to share? Something that maybe has never been shared on the podcast?
Never been mentioned.
I don't know.
I don't know if that's possible.
Well, just say
5
something.
years of talking.
What's a fun fact about?
We've shared a lot. Jeremiah, I know you got something.
I don't know. I've been actually trying to think of this all
day,
a while now.
Fun fact.
Well, I think I've probably said this, but when I was in 7th grade, I dyed my hair blue. That was a thing. 13-year-old.
Bring it back.
13-year-old Jeremiah had blue hair because I thought it was cool, and then I was like,
it was cool back then. And some people now think it's cool. Kudos to you.
Never again.
Come on, bring it back. I want the long hair back.
That's never gonna happen.
Jeremiah with hair down to his shoulders, bro.
I would love that so much.
That was way too much work to take care of.
Or a big beard. One of this two.
I would love to have a big beard, but
just do it.
I work with food, so I can't.
Oh, yeah. That's valid.
Just a mustache?
No.
That could be
big handlebars?
No.
Your eyeballs? I used to have a handlebar mustache for like.
That can't be your fun fact. That can't be your fun
fact. It has to be. We gotta keep going. We got a lot to go through tonight.
We got 8 or you got 6 more.
Fun. What is my fun?
That's a fun fact.
There's part of me that wants to be like, I'm a black belt, but I feel like we've talked about this.
You've said that before, but that's pretty
times.
Cool.
That's still pretty fun.
Yeah.
Could you still use it? Do you think you could like?
That was like when you're like 12 or something like that.
Butt?
No, it was like
high school.
It was high school.
Okay.
I have a lot of the muscle memory. I'm out of shape, but I can still do stuff. I would get winded very fast.
Don't you run on a regular basis?
Not recently. No. No, my knees are shot because I skateboarded too. Maybe that's my fun fact. I skateboarded for 3 years and wanted to be pro.
I think.
Can you do like a kickflip and stuff?
Oh yeah,
that's pretty cute.
Can you do an Indy 9?
Ooh, look at you, Jeremiah.
That's not a trick that I ever learned.
You know what that is?
No.
The 900 that Tony Hawk.
Yeah.
Oh, did you say Indy 900?
Indy 9.
Anyway,
okay, that's your fun fact.
Here's a fun fact. Here's a fun fact. If I could have any car in the world right now, it would be a 98 Nissan Skyline GTR, the one that not the specific one that Paul Walker drives in Too Fast, Too Furious, but that model. I cannot express to you how much I would love to have that car.
And what color would you like?
Oh, man.
Ooh.
There's a part of me that wants to go just crazy and do like a matte lavender and like really make it look nice. You know what I'm saying? Like not just paint the car, but like do the rims and lower it a little bit. And like, but you can't go wrong with black.
Do a matte black.
Yeah. So I don't know. I'd have to think about it.
All right.
I don't even own a car right now. So
I was gonna say, is it hard now that you're not in LA to not have a car? Oh, is it?
It's easier. Transit's fantastic.
That's true, actually.
Yeah. I commute 2 days a week to the office. It's a 20 minute.
You have to go in now that you're closer.
Yeah.
They got you.
I mean, I enjoy it. So, but yeah, it's like a 20-minute subway ride, like a 10-minute walk from the station, and you're there.
Boy, if you drove across that bridge, bro, that'd take you forever.
An hour. Yeah.
I got stuck on that bridge once because someone decided to jump off of it.
Okay, moving on.
But anyways,
next up, so an old argument that we used to have on the podcast has come back via voicemails.
Oh Lord!
It's back at it again. So
might as well start pushing the button right now.
So this is gonna bring a lot of joy to Andrew's life right now. So let's take a listen to Yaretzi's second voicemail.
Hey Empire Radio, this is Yaretzi, back with the second voicemail. And I'm just gonna get down to the nitty-gritty, like Nacho Libre would say. This is in response to what Sky King said in his voicemail last week. Do you know the difference between an error and a mistake, Sky King? Because if you don't, you should definitely look that quote up or read the Dawn trilogy. Because you have made a grave mistake, thinking that Gonk is better than Clink.
Oh my.
Because Clink will sweep, and Clink will always sweep till the end of time. I will go to my grave defending it and believing it, because Clink is amazing, and you have just made a powerful enemy.
Whoa, that's
anyway, bye.
Yo, I just want you to know that I just recently reread that book, and that is a chilling quote.
Yeah, that's pretty intense.
No, like, do y'all remember what happens there?
I don't.
Oh man, Thrawn. That's a terrifying moment. An Imperial officer dies. He makes it. Anyways, it doesn't matter. That's not the point. Great quote though. That's
shots fired.
Great quote. Clink sweeps.
Yeah. Facts.
Well, Sky King said Team Gonk, which I'm Team Gonk.
Sky.
So
yeah. Well,
but
everyone makes mistakes.
We can forgive that.
All right, moving on to the next one from Yaretzi. Let's take a listen. Number 3.
Okay.
Hey Empire Radio, this is Yaretzi for the third time. Yes, I know. This 3 voicemails.
Great.
And Sky King, I'm not actually your enemy. Look, you come at my boy Clink, you come at me, okay? Anyway, this one I actually have a question. Andrew or Drew or Jeremiah, I don't know if y'all read any other books other than Star Wars, but other than Star Wars books, what is your favorite, like, trilogy or, like, series? What is your favorite non-Star Wars book or series or trilogy? Anyway, that's my question. Yaretzi out.
All right, thank you. Yaretzi for number 3. But do you guys read other books? I know Drew is actually reading a series.
I'm reading a series right now.
Is it Bluey?
Oh, I've already read all those. What do you mean?
Oh.
No, I'm reading Harry Potter right now. I'm on book 3.
Bro.
And it's the first time reading through it.
Oh.
First time ever.
Dude, buckle up, Buttercup.
I heard book 6 is like crazy.
Bro, the books I read through those for the first time a year and a half ago.
I should send you. So there's this guy who like from somewhere in Europe, I assume London area.
Yeah.
But he did the whole, like, he read, and so like he has a YouTube channel and he just read the first book.
Yeah.
And then the second book. And so for the second one, I just listened to him and read along, like followed along.
Yeah.
And his accent's amazing, and he should get hired to do all of them. Like,
dude,
truthfully, they
those
need to redo
books,
them.
Man.
But I should send it to you.
Buckle
so you
up.
can just
That's all I'm gonna
listen to
say.
them. But I commented, I'm like, this is the first time going through this.
Yeah.
These books, and everyone was like, book 6 is you cannot, because it has nothing. It's like completely different than the movies. Apparently,
it's not completely different, but it's such a better experience reading them. And I mean, to be fair, they're good at it. The movies are good adaptations for what they have to fit into a single movie. They're pretty good. You know?
Well, I'm excited for the show, which is why I'm kind of prepping for it.
Yeah, so that's what made me excited for the show, because there is a lot that they do leave out. So buckle up, though. It gets really excited. There's some tearjerker moments towards the end of those, but yeah, those are really good. But I mean, honestly, I don't read a ton outside of Star Wars. Actually, I have an embarrassingly large collection of Star Wars books now. Like, it's grown over the years, and like I'm really proud of it, but also it's a lot of Star Wars books.
Hey, so when we did the 300 thing, I went over some statistics,
and
like we've read 19 books for the podcast. So I've read 19 Star Wars books because of
that's Andrew. That's so funny, because I read 19 books for the next 4 weeks of podcast.
Right,
that's fair.
But no, that's good.
But for me, reading those many books was like,
remember how he didn't want to read?
Yeah,
any,
I'm proud of you.
Like pull teeth to get him to do
this is kind of funny. So going back, I remember there was one episode that like it was just you and Drew, I thought it was, or whatever.
Yeah.
And I was going through the old episodes, and I was actually in that one. Like, you and I recorded something separate, and then you and Drew recorded the second thing.
Yeah.
Because like our schedules were all messed up or whatever. And what I skipped out and what you guys did,
I remember this,
was the first chapter release of the Thrawn Ascendancy book. The first one, like it was just like early. I'm like, I don't care about that. It's books, like blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
And now I'm looking back and I'm like, dang it, I should have been there for that.
Yeah.
Because remember, Andrew, we like broke it down because it was like leaked.
Yeah, I do remember that vaguely.
That was actually a really fun episode.
But yeah, I mean, I would say Harry Potter is definitely up there for me. It's one of the only other things outside of Star Wars that like we purchased the full set and like we own, like we're gonna hold on to.
I wanna like, because right now I'm just reading on my Kindle, and I'm gonna finish it that way. But then I'm gonna go to London and pick up the London copies, because there's different, like they're all named different.
Yeah, he can go to London whenever he wants for like $100. He thinks he's so cool.
Jeez. I will say outside of those, I really enjoy photography books, which is like, I don't know, you don't really read photography books, but I love photography books.
My next thing after Harry Potter is gonna be like sitting down and like reading Lord of the Rings.
Dude, I want to do that too. I really, because I don't own those, but I can't stop. I can't stop now because
can't stop, won't stop.
NJO's done. And so now the next 3 books is the Swarm War trilogy. And after that, you get into Legacy of the Force and Fate of the Jedi, which are like direct continuations of the New Jedi Order. And a lot of really intense stuff happens. So I'm like slowly working my way to the actual end of the EU on that end. So yeah, I don't know when I'm going to be able to read those, but we'll see. At a certain point, we will have gone over on this podcast most of the main EU.
It's kind of cool. Think about.
So like what percent of like the EU, like how many EU books are there technically altogether?
That matter?
It's a lot.
Like, I mean, it's over 100 or less than 100?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Over 100.
Okay. It's definitely over 100.
So I will
you could go to Half Price Book and see a book that you've never seen before.
So here's some context. All right. Let me see if it'll focus.
There it is.
So we have New Jedi Order. These are all the New Jedi Order books. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
We have the Dark Nest trilogy, Swarm War trilogy, and then this is Legacy of the Force, and then Fate of the Jedi, and then there's one book at the end. Well, X-Wing Mercy Kill, and I guess these 3. Now that I'm seeing it, but like I'm probably not going to get those 3 and like these extra ones. But my goal is, so I got these. Next will be Legacy of the Force, which is the next big saga, and then of course Fate of the Jedi, which is like it like directly continues with Jaina and Jason, and you know, like all this. So anyways, so we'll see. But it is now my goal. Like I never set out to like own and read a bunch of the EU, but now that I've like,
now that you're this far in, you might
yeah,
as well finish it.
my goal is to like finish it. Yeah.
What's the point?
So, anyways, great question.
But for me, even though I don't, only novels that I read are Star Wars books, but if you said series, which is technically a series, if I were going to mention my like theology books that I read, that's like true. the Zondervan exegetical commentary series.
Oh my gosh.
I think that is such a good series for like the way it's formatted. So if you like your Bible studying, look up Zondervan exegetical commentary series. They're great. Go check them out. I own a lot of them. All right, next up, we got Rafa's fourth voicemail, and it's specifically a question for Andrew. So let's take a listen. Ooh.
Hello again, Empire Radio. This is Yaretsi for the fourth voicemail. I know, it's a lot. And I went back and listened to the 5-year celebration for the Empire Radio podcast, and I noticed Jeremiah had a comment about my name. It is not European. It is actually Aztec, which is an indigenous group in Mexico. And I did have another question, and this one's for Andrew. So the first question I ever sent in to the podcast was actually about the EU. And before listening to this podcast, I had no idea what EU and canon were. So yeah, glad I got that cleared up. Anyway, Andrew, what do you know about the battle or massacre of Galadron, and how do you think it affected Dooku and Jango? Anyway, that's my question. Bye.
Uh-oh, by the looks of that. So I actually looked it up originally.
Yeah.
It was I think it was like the last or one of the final battles of the Jedi Mandalorian War. It was the last mission that Dooku was sent on, and it seemed to be like his last like thing to like put him over the top to like leave the.
So I will admit that probably
she says no one knows.
Yeah, probably my weakest area in the EU timeline is that like is the EU stuff related to the Clone Wars and like the little bit before it. Other than
right.
Plagueis, like that is embarrassingly my like by far my weakest link. Like I've got a lot of like the Old Republic and like the Origins of the Sith and stuff, and like a lot after the original trilogy. But it's like that specific period. Like I've done the Republic Commando books, which are fantastic. But like, no, I don't. Because like a lot of that happened in comics too.
Mm.
Well, some of it did. So it was a little bit more of a mixed media thing. But like, yeah, I actually don't know.
Well, maybe in a few years when you got time, you can do that era of things. So hopefully, Yaretsi, you're still here in a few years, and we can answer that question more thoroughly for you.
I've man, it sucks. I wish I knew.
Yeah,
but yeah,
I'm curious now.
Yeah, but it's cool that you are of Aztecian line of. Was the Aztec? What did you say?
There's an indigenous tribe, indigenous people in Mexico.
Aztec, right? She said. So that's pretty cool. Because like I think her first voicemail, like I thought there was like a little accent, so we didn't know like where she was. So I thought, are you from Europe or whatever? So, but her name's just a cultural name, so that's cool.
That's cool.
Nice.
Aztec.
All right. Well, thank you, Yaretsi, for your 4 voicemails. But we got 2 more tonight. Next one up is someone we haven't heard from in a while. Someone named Rafa. So let's take a listen.
Hey, Empire Radio. It's Rafa again. I just have a question for you guys. What's your favorite Star Wars building? Like, not a space station or anything like in space, like the Death Star, but like your favorite Star Wars building. Anyways, I just wanted to know that. Keep up the great work, guys. Bye.
Thank you, Rafa. And that is a very interesting question.
A really good question.
Because it's Star Wars. You think of things in the stars like space stations and ships and stuff, but
yeah,
they're still buildings. So I immediately was thinking like the Jedi Temple on Coruscant.
I was going to say that
like
was
the Senate building. Like those are just so like big iconic things.
Yeah, the Senate building is.
I would say the Jedi Temple on Coruscant is very prominent. Like you know what that is.
What about like Jabba's palace? Was that something?
Ooh, true. Hey, chill over there.
Is a trash heap. Just, do you know how bad that play? I was rewatching the Return of the Jedi the other day, and like, you know how bad that's probably smelled.
Before or after Boba took over?
Before, when Jabba was there, when they were doing the dancing and the drinking, and so it probably smelled like absolute trash. Everyone's sweaty.
Yeah.
Everyone's eating stuff.
He's like a giant slug.
Everyone has gas.
Anyways, Cantina. That's a cool one.
Oh yeah, that's iconic. Oh man, I had one, and then we started talking about,
or maybe like
the Naboo Palace.
That's pretty cool. Italy. Or
that's true.
or Topoka City. Those are some cool like.
Oh, what's
structures?
That tower from
Luke's Jedi Academy on Yavin 4. That like that whole base, the Rebel base, and it becomes his academy. That's a cool place.
What's
pyramids.
the planet from Rebels with the giant tower?
Lothal.
Yeah. So that tower.
Oh, the one that like
sweet.
Everyone goes in iconically to like look at the scenery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That one's pretty cool. There's some good ones.
The ISB building in Andor is so cool.
Yeah.
I just started rewatching today. Watched the first 3 episodes today.
Dude, the show is so good, dude.
I'm excited, dude.
The Emperor's Storehouse on Wayland. Mount Tantus.
Oh, Mount Tantus, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm spacing now. But those towers on that rain planet, I'm like blanking.
That ring planet?
Rain planet.
Camino?
Yeah,
I said it. Topeka City.
Oh.
Tapioca.
Yeah. Yes.
That's something I don't think about a lot. Yep. Vader's Castle.
Ooh,
true.
Yeah, we might have to go with Vader's Castle. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's pretty dope. That's like the only cool thing about that place.
They just released a book that is like a cross section of canon places, and they go into Vader's palace, and it's sick. There's so much more in there that I ever thought was there, and it's canon. So
cool.
it's yeah. I was gonna go pick it up at some point, but I think it like just dropped like 3 or 4 days ago in the US. So
cool.
It's cool.
All right. Well, thank you, Rafa. It's good to hear from you. It's been a while, but keep them coming whenever you like to ask any question or to make any comments. But
yeah. We
got our final one, and Andrew
is so behind.
It's still going on. The coup d'etat verse is still going strong. I don't know if there's ever going to be an end. Relevant information. So he was being trained by Empress female Palpatine, because she was in charge of the First Order. He was fighting on behalf of the First Order against the Resistance. Yeah.
Oh.
Well, he just says Empress Palpatine. We're just assuming it's Rey. There's a lot of alternated universe stuff in here. Like the Republic had their own moon-sized space station that Anakin and Obi-Wan lived on and died on that when the First Order destroyed it. All that stuff going on.
This is like What If.
Yeah, but
Infinity.
He was fighting against the Resistance on Dakar. He got crashed and got stranded on the planet, and they got left behind. And Jedi Ben Solo and Luke Skywalker have come and recruited him and have been training Garrett in the ways of the light side. And so,
dang,
that's a big 30,000 view.
Pop off, King.
Yeah. So let's take a listen of where we're at now.
Hey, Empire Radio, it's Garrett. I'm really fitting in here at the Resistance. I can't believe I fell for the deceit and lies of the First Order. I must do everything in my power to stop them. Luke and Ben have trained me nonstop for a month now, and I'm finally able to best Ben in lightsaber combat. I truly feel like I'm becoming a part of their family. Speaking of family, do you think it was the right decision for the Jedi to remove younglings from their families, or do you think it would have been better to take their families with them?
Come on.
Well, here's the next hour of.
I was like, dude, you can't just drop that.
Drop that.
Also, I love how he's like, I can't believe I fell for the lies of the First Order, and my first response was, "Yeah, it happens to the best of us." it's a thing.
It's a thing.
Okay, all right. So we have two guys who don't have children. We have a dad. We have two guys who don't have children. I have a cat. It's not the same, but there's a level of parenting.
Okay,
there.
so I would say to answer this question, we have to understand it within the Star Wars universe. So I think there is truth to what the Jedi say about attachments. Now, when we think of things in our world, like it's not the same. So I would say that it makes sense why, as a general rule, like they would take children at a young age so they don't have attachments and stuff. So it makes sense. But the question is, if they took more older people, adults, and brought them in, like, would the Jedi be able to be successful in training people? I would probably say it'd be a lot harder. So, like, within the universe, it makes sense. So I'd say they're right. But we can see, like, an acolyte, how terrible it can turn out when you take older kids. So, I don't know.
Or Anakin. But then you get...
If you disagree with me, that's fine.
Then you get Luke, and Luke... Well, I guess...
I'm going to go with Drew says first.
He didn't really have attachment to his aunt and uncle, clearly.
Yeah, he did not cry at all.
Yeah, that was a very quick... I rewatched that, and I was like...
Yeah.
Okay, I guess we did.
If you like think about it, it's like really sad how he just was like
he looks on at them like crispy torso.
He's like, all right, well,
and then he comes back and he's like, "There's nothing for me here. Better go be a Jedi." And I was like,
"Let's go." And I'm like, yeah, but so like, if you think of like Luke, he becomes a Jedi, and in the EU. Homeboy gets married and has a lot of attachments. I don't know. I understand what they're doing. Andrew's gone. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to... I understand it, why they did it, but it's still sad for those parents who just like got their kid straight up taken from them.
Here's my thing. It's not the attachments, it's the Jedi's inability to teach them properly.
Ooh.
Because like all through the EU, here we go, Andrew's doing his thing again. I know, but like all through the EU, there are Jedi who have successful attachments and it makes them stronger. But the reason for that is because they're well adjusted. They're like they're not taken from birth and then being like, you can't have attachments because it's bad. It'll lead to like they're not scared into not having attachments. They just like they come to terms. Like eventually, I don't know the specific circumstances, but I do know that like Luke loses Mara at some point, and like he just navigates that as an adjusted adult. Like, well, but it doesn't.
I think
it doesn't lead him to the dark side or anything.
You see that with Anakin.
Yeah,
like if they would have acknowledged his attachment to his mom,
never would have happened.
Then he could have been able to save her, and then they probably wouldn't have had issues. Or if he was able to be upfront with his acknowledgement with Padme, then maybe they wouldn't have had issues.
And this
and
goes
clearly
back...
Obi-Wan still had attachments because
yeah.
he had attachment and he had to let it go.
I
he
think
wasn't able to marry his
again,
love, you know?
It's all about it's the extremes, right? Like it's balance is about finding the balance in the Force is about finding the spot in between the extremes. Feeling passion is not wrong, but feeling passion to the point where it feels anger and rage is like and embracing that is wrong. You know, like going towards the light side is inherently a good thing, but like you can go so far that it restricts your abilities in the Force. So it's like, I think
Vader's attachment to Luke later on is the reason why
exactly
he was able to do what he did.
And again, if Anakin had gotten therapy, just general therapy, like I don't think Star Wars would have happened, honestly, or Vader wouldn't have happened. So like, I don't know. I I am personally in the camp that's like, I don't think they should have been taken from their families and then told like you're forbidden to know them and stuff, because like honestly I feel like that causes more, because they weren't doing that and then like giving them resources to cope with that. They were just doing that and mostly being like, trust in the Force and don't think about everything else, and like it's not a great way.
Because doesn't Obi-Wan have a brother? Is that canon?
Well, he says he remembers her brother when he's talking to Kid Leia, but
yeah,
that's not really. That's just a memory that he thinks he has. He doesn't know if it's true or not.
Yeah, so I don't know. I see the danger in it, of course, of attachment.
So does it in the EU? Do they talk about the attachment stuff at all, or is that just a movie thing? Like George Lucas created that concept, like in the movies, but it's not fleshed out or talked about or addressed in the EU.
So keep in mind that the bulk of the EU was really written before a lot of that was solidified.
Right. So like before the prequels, because was attachment discussed in the original trilogy? So then like these books came out, like started coming out before that was really established. Like,
but then again, like Lucas could have been setting that up to give another like add fuel to the fire of like, yep, and this is why the Jedi were destroyed.
I don't think it shows Jedis in a good light necessarily.
I don't know. I'm so, especially after like reading so many of these books where like
their siblings are hanging out together and doing this, like clearly
and
they
like
have
they're marrying and they're having kids and there's Jedi children around and like they have their own relationships, and then and like it's all about like, if anything, the family and the attachment like helps them become better Jedi, because like they have a support system around them that helps them navigate the really tough times.
Well, until one of them tells them not to shoot, and then
well I mean, to be fair, they're 16 and 15, so they're not they're like not the most mature.
Their frontal cortex is not fully developed yet.
Not by any means. So it's like I don't know, but I think the adults in the series I think are like Mara is there to have really hard conversations with Luke when he needs to have them.
Well, and even in canon, like Leia had attachment to Han, and she still became a Jedi until she decided to no longer train.
Yeah.
And it was her attachment to Ben that caused her to die. And we'll end on that note.
That was a sacrifice. It was a noble sacrifice.
I know, but it was still an attachment, and she made a sacrifice. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, good or bad, anything. I'm just saying she had an attachment to her son.
And Luke had an attachment to Ben, which is why he couldn't kill him. But now we're getting into the nitty gritty parts.
That's a whole cantina discussion for another time.
Yeah.
But thank you, everyone, for sending in voicemails. Thank you, Garrett. Is the story ever going to end? We don't know. Or is this going to be a perpetual story? And Garrett will get married someday and have kids, and he'll be raising his kids with the Jedi ways,
or they'll be taken from him.
What if his kids turn to the dark side?
Ooh.
And he has to
Hey, don't give him plots.
So anyway, if you want to get connected to Empire Radio more than just listening or watching on YouTube, go in the description below, click the links.co/Empire Radio, links spelled 2 I's. Click that landing page for everything. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, join the Discord, a lot of fun in there. Follow us on Twitch for live streams. If you want to send in a voicemail, There's a link right there, super easy. And there's also an email if you need to email us about anything. We love to get connected with anyone listening via all of our social media and whatnot. So, yeah. Anything else, boys?
If you like tonight, there are 3 more weeks
of this.
3 more weeks of this every Wednesday, starting approximately
between 8 and 8:30 Central Standard Time.
8 and 8:30 Central, 6 and 6:30 Pacific, 9 and 9:30 Eastern. You can do the rest. 3 more of these.
If you're outside of this country, figure it out on your own.
Yeah, and the story is going to get more intense. There's going to be some twists. There's going to be some turns.
You never already lost Chewie, so I don't know what else we're going to get.
Oh, there's a lot more. Oh, there's more death.
Oh, Lord.
Don't get attached to anyone.
Besides Luke, we know he doesn't die.
Especially Leia.
Okay, chill out.
All right, well, you've been listening to another EU-tastic episode of Empire Radio. I'm Jeremiah.
I'm Andrew.
I'm Drew.
And may the Force be with you.
Always.